What is happening, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I hope you guys are doing all right. I hope you guys had a good night. If you are not on, let's say, the East Coast and you're somewhere else in the world, I hope you have had a fantastic day. We have a damn good show for you today, a very big show for you today in regards to the guests and everything else that we are going to have. I'm looking for something very specific. Because I do want to do monologue and I want to cut this piece. Oh, right here. So first and foremost, shout out to the audience. Thank all of you for joining me. I appreciate it. You guys makes the show what it is. You guys make the show run. You can't really have a show if you don't have an audience. I suppose you could, but it's kind of a different phenomena, right? I would like to start off by saying we are witnessing something that is rather astonishing. And we don't entirely see it on a daily basis, but it's happening in the background. And what I mean is the special military operation that has taken place in Ukraine and the significance of that special military operation. When the war first started, I would ask the question, I would say the context of the world has changed because of what is taking place in Ukraine. And I meant that. And I didn't mean it in timid ways. Think of North Korea, think of Iran, think of these countries that were somewhat on the outskirts in regards to their political disposition in the world. That is no longer the case. And as I point out, a precipice is about to be reached. When Joe Biden, let's say, pushed this, and you can say Obama too, but in 2014, when the government was overthrown, it was clear that something was going to take place in response to that government being overthrown. Don't take my word for it. You can go to William Burns' memo. William Burns' memo is very clear, very specific, and he nails down exactly what is taking place right now. And this is going back to 2008 when William Burns wrote this memo. This was after the Bucharest summit where Ukraine was invited to join NATO, and this was Burns' response. Burns was working in the CIA under Joe Biden when Joe Biden was president, but this was before. Right here. Ukraine and Georgia's NATO aspirations not only touch a raw nerve in Russia, they engender serious concerns about the consequences for stability in the region. Not only does Russia perceive encirclement, it's not their perception, it's what they're trying to do, but let's keep going, and efforts to undermine Russia's influence in the region, but it also fears unpredictable and uncontrolled consequences, which would seriously affect Russia's security interests. I mean, for God's sake, it's on their border. It's on the border. Experts tell us that Russia in particular is worried that strong divisions in Ukraine over NATO membership, with much of ethnic Russian community against membership, could lead to a major split involving violence, or at worst, a civil war. That eventuality, Russia would have to decide whether it would intervene, a decision Russia does not want to have to face. So that is Burns' US analysis saying, look, if you keep pushing NATO membership in Ukraine, you are going to provoke a civil war. And considering that this is taking place on the border with you backing one of the sides of that civil war, we will get involved, or at the very least, they will most likely get involved, or a choice would have to be made about getting involved, a choice that they wouldn't necessarily want to do. X number of years later, here we are. Meaning they knew, even back then, that this was a red line. And they kept pushing this red line. So this idea that Russia just wants more territory is nonsense. That they just want to expand into Europe and go fight NATO is nonsense. They are not the provocateurs. We are. My point is that we are coming to a precipice of 0 and 1, meaning it's one or the other. And just to be clear on what I mean by that, out of hubris, degeneracy, a idea of Western elitism, where the West believes is better than the rest of the world, something that reality doesn't necessarily show in the least. They've decided to wager chips on a gambling table. And either the US is going to have to make a choice of, do we keep going or do we stop? Meaning, do we keep pushing and pushing and pushing? Or do we say, this is enough, we take our chips and go home, and we accept the L? Now, the reason why I say hubris is because it's very difficult for an American president to accept a loss on this massive level. After all, this is a global engagement where you're talking about like 1 million Ukrainians dead, maybe 100,000 Russians dead. This is a major war. Europe has effectively gone all into this war, even to the point of screaming that they're going to put in troops into Ukraine, which is really going to be a tripwire. What happens when Pokrovsk falls? What happens if Russia takes Kiev? What does Washington do? What does Europe do? Now, up to this point, the only thing they've done is escalate. And they've done so with sanctions. They've done so with more money. They've done so with more weapons. But as we're seeing, the weapons are becoming less effective. The weapons are running out because the majority of those weapons are coming from the US. And we can't supply the entire world, even though we would love to do so with military contracts and everything else. It's a fundraising mechanism on some level. What happens when Ukraine and the military of Ukraine collapses? CNN came out with this piece that is rather astonishing when you read through it in regards to what they're admitting. A few parts. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to make this clear. The Ukrainian military is collapsing. Part of the reason that Pokrovsk is falling, that they're in Kupiansk, which was another article that came out for DD Geopolitics today. The speed of the Russian advance is only going to go faster. They may call it lava now, but if you think about it, lava is an inexorable flow, even if it's going slow, but the speed and the pace of it is only going to increase because the level of defenses that they have is less than the type of land is better for this type of maneuver warfare. Russia has 2 additional militaries waiting in the wings for an attack. Ukraine is having difficulty getting people to the battlefield in and of itself. And even the people that they have on the battlefield, the level of gaps and everything else is part of the reason why Russia was able to effectively take Pokrovsk. Ukrainian commander defending the area told, this is not Pokrovsk where he's defending, it's another area. The area told CNN he had not received new personnel for his unit for 8 months and was only resupplying frontline positions where sometimes a pair of soldiers hold off dozens of Russian attackers with drones and vehicles would not reach the trenches. 2 people guarding a particular area, not receiving personnel for 8 months. That is mind-blowing. How do you maintain a military under those terms, right? How do you keep that military going? How do you keep that military up? Here's another part. I'm going to butcher this name. Vasil supported communication from the front lines of the nature of the military problems was a serious issue. A lot of things are not communicated and hidden, he said. We don't communicate a lot with things to our state. Our state doesn't communicate a lot of things to the people. To understand the situation, you have to be in it. When we say the situation is difficult, no one understands. You have to be in our shoes. We are tired. Everyone is tired of this war. And I believe that other countries are tired of helping us. Talk about a hit to morale. Talk about a hit to morale. Those are the people that are holding the line and fighting for Ukraine. And you have to ask yourself, can the military, which I strongly suspect that's a shared point of view, considering the Russian plan has been to keep Ukraine off balance, to keep attacking them at all places. We have more men, they're running out of men, just like the guy said. So keep them active, keep pushing, keep pushing. Don't give them any rest. Don't give them any time where they can relax. If you are on the battlefield, would you like to see, trigger warning, by the way, the drone wars have gotten very prolific. And at any moment, this could be your life. Yep. That could be you. That's what they're dealing with. Daily basis. Day in, day out. Day in, day out. Now the question becomes, they will collapse. A military cannot take this level of attrition damage and maintain itself. And when they do collapse, what happens? That is the precipice. That is the level. That is the context of the world going from a 0 to a 1 when it changes. I will tell you this. When I say hubris, I've said before that I was a monster at chess when I was a kid. I'm still great at blitz. I used to be a monster. And I had stopped playing for several years, or at the very least stopped playing tournament chess. I go to a tournament. I assume that my powers were still intact and assume that I was still that monster that I was 10 years ago. First game goes very well. I say, hey, this looks awesome. Still got it. I got crushed the rest of the games. The issue is that you get something into your mind that because you were able to do something at one point, that you can continue to do it at a later point. That point of view eventually gets challenged. When that point of view gets challenged, the context of your reality changes. Now, if you're playing chess at a tournament, okay, that's one thing, right? Nobody dies, typically. You may bang a table. You may, go out feeling some kind of way. Your wife looking at you poorly. She sits in the back seat because you lost so poorly. But nobody dies. When you lose 1 million men, when the United States said we're with you for as long as it takes, when Europe and they change their politics, they literally degrade the living standards of the population in those countries. You put it all on the line and you lose. Do you add another 1,000 to the table, or do you take your chips, go to McDonald's, and then go home? That is the precipice that we are about to encounter. Now, Donald Trump has said, I'm going to give you 10 days. So what? Doesn't matter. It's not the 10 days. The catch becomes Trump can see exactly what is taking place with Ukraine right now in regards to the pressure that Russia is putting it under. It can see that their forces are dwindling. Their capability is dwindling. And he knows it, which is the reason why he says, okay, I'm going to take it from the 50 days to 10. A, Russia doesn't care. B, the consequences of the secondary sanctions is going to be monstrous if indeed Taco Trump even goes through with them. And because he made such a big deal out of it, if it's a bluff, you're just going to lose that much more credibility, just like you lost credibility in changing it from 50 to 50 to 10, or lost credibility in working with the Iranians and then having an attack on the same Iranians. I'm saying Trump has no credibility. Either he doesn't control his government or he's a flagrant liar. From my point of view, he's both, which means anything that takes place has to take place on the battlefield because you can't trust the US government. So at some point, this precipice will be hit. The 10 days doesn't matter. It's not going to change Russian behavior. And I would go so far as to say nothing the US does will change Russian behavior. So will you continue to escalate? And at what point do you either take your ball and go home, or you escalate to the point where you are at a shooting war with the Russians? That is the precipice to which we're dealing with. I want to bring in my guests. I see him in the background. We are joined with the man himself, Jeff Rich. Jeff, how you doing, my man? You doing okay this evening?
I'm really good, Jamal, and that was a great opening monologue.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate when people kiss me on the ego. I appreciate that.
I'm good. I did a bit of a live stream myself earlier today, and I bought myself a new webcam yesterday, so hopefully my image is a bit better quality for all the viewers out there now too.
So for my birthday, I bought myself a new watch, and I bought myself a camera and a new mic. I haven't put it in yet. I need it because I'm doing the digital nomad thing. I'm trying to save cash. This mic is very heavy. That light is very heavy, and if I can find a way to cut it down, I can save money on the moving and everything else. But just so the audience will know, we're sitting here chit-chatting. Jeff Rich. Jeff Rich is an author, historian, podcaster, worked 33 years in government. He is now retired. He currently lives in Melbourne, Australia. Jeff has spent a lifetime of studying history and how knowledge of historical currents can help give context to a changing world. You can find Jeff on YouTube at The Burning Archive, a damn good channel. Jeff, I love your show. And I may tell people that, hey, this is a good channel. I love your channel. You have a great channel. The Burning Archive, and you can find him on Substack at jeffrich.substack.com. I love your channel because it's historical. There's historical content. And I learn stuff when I watch it. It's not just political rhetoric and passion and anger. This is historical thing, all from Russia, China, the US,
Yep.
etc. I love it.
I even did one about Australia the other day. So
Did you?
yeah. So
By
because
the way, I was able to get Warwick Powell. He is a fantastic guest.
no, I've had Warwick on the show a few times and correspond with him quite a bit. He's a really great guest. So,
Yeah.
and like there's few people I think who can actually really explain what the hell's going on with the world economy
Yes.
in the way that Warwick does. But he's also got a really great understanding of politics and culture and everything else, and it kind of puts it all in that framework. So yeah, he's a really great guest.
It's funny when I talk to people who either study Chinese history, either are in China, they're very calm as compared, like, and I can see it, right? I can feel it as I'm talking to him. No, he's really good.
A lot of not very calm things, though, in Chinese history. I did a whole series on China on my Substack, including the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward, and you know the sort of internal wars in the 19th century and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of tragedy there as well, but a lot of calmness as well.
Of Three Body is based in that they are so the woman lives through the Chinese Revolution, and they take her dad up and they effectively tell her dad that because he's a physicist, he is teaching Western propaganda. And he's like, Einstein is not Western propaganda. And they literally beat him to death as she watches. They put her in prison. They bring her out. And when she realizes, and this is a yada yada, but when they realize that the Chinese government was trying to contact UFO aliens, she made contact. She was very brilliant with Li Wenye, I believe her name is. She makes contact, and the alien responds back effectively saying, do not contact us again. We are not a passive race. I am a pacifist. They are not. Do not contact us again. And she contacted us and said, come get us. We can't deal with our own affairs. Meaning she was so broken from that experience that she was like, we cannot deal with human affairs. I got to be honest, I feel that way with the Gaza thing. And it gave me more context into her point of view of like, whoa, if this is being allowed, we can't manage this earth. But
it's an astonishing trauma. But just think what the poor people of Ukraine are going through right now. I mean, they're going to be thinking about these years in much the same way as maybe people in China think about the Cultural Revolution, the decade of chaos.
Transition, Jeff. Fantastic transition. I'm glad. I was trying to find a way to pivot. you helped me. Let's get into that, because you had a different point of view on the protest. I got to be honest with you. I'm leaning more towards the Mark Sloboda side, because I think this is more of a rap on the knuckles as opposed to a get rid of Zelensky. And just to be clear, there's an article that came out, Russian Secret Service. So take it with a massive grain of salt. And I say that also because it doesn't make sense that Donald Trump will cut the days into 10 if indeed this plan was supposed to be enacted to try to get rid of Zelensky before the other plan came up. But they're saying that there was a secret meeting in the Alps between Yermak, the UK, US representatives, and that Yermak set Zelensky up by giving him advice to go after Sapo and Abu, which effect was the ignition point for quote unquote protests. And that for all intents and purposes, they've agreed to get rid of Zelensky and put in Zelensky, which they even had a photo shoot of Zelensky that just came out.
Vogue. Because that's what you do if you want to run Ukraine. You're photo shooting Vogue.
By the way, they did the same thing for Zelensky.
Did they? Yeah.
Yes, they did the same thing for Zelensky at the time. And it's like he's passionately holding his wife. I love this photo. It's so passionate. And I can just imagine the cameraman screaming, more passion, squeeze it if you want to, win this war. And they've got this again, Jelani. I don't know if it was a Vogue photo shoot, but they definitely did a photo shoot for him also to shape the beard and everything else. So Zelensky now has his photo shoot for Vogue. So give me your take on this, because you have a different take on this than
because I thought your interpretation or your model for making sense of the protest was a really good one, and I also heard Mark's, and I thought that was really good too. I mean, you were basically saying kind of color revolution 2.0,
Yeah.
and Mark was saying, I don't think it's a regime change. It's not organized enough, and there's no muscle kind of thing.
Right.
And I sort of think, I mean, because I did an interview the other day with this Ukrainian historian Marta Havrishko, who is, if anyone gets the chance to watch it on my channel, it's a fantastic insight into the thinking, and she sort of goes through a lot of the slogans and the signs and the types of people involved and all that sort of stuff. So I think that it's certainly a sign that authority, I think, is breaking down like civil authority is breaking down in Ukraine, as well as the whole military situation, which maybe some of your other guests were better informed to comment on than me, but it's clearly not doing too well. But I think you need to see the protests or what's going on in Ukraine at sort of three different levels. So there's the sort of street level, if you like, of what's going on in the society. And I think that is what is actually pushing a lot of the people into the protests. And behind it is a really deep sense of, I guess, betrayal that, what they, and this is what Marta was saying in the interview, that, their hopes of a European Ukraine back in 2013, 2014 have been betrayed and dashed. And now Ukraine is what she describes for men as an open-air prison. And it's not great for women too. I mean, there was reports about an astonishingly large proportion of Ukrainian women who are kind of in the sex industry in one way or the other. They have, OnlyFans porn stars who promote conscription into the military, which is,
It's like
the
50%.
ultimate moral. Yeah, well, I mean, that's an astonishing number.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did notice about the protests is there is a large number of women in the protests as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my sense is there is a genuine, spontaneous outburst of political emotion around betrayal, loss of trust, and anger about corruption. But corruption is a kind of a lightning rod for a whole set of issues. Because one of the slogans that people have been using is corruption kills. So they're not saying, corruption is, not good practice, or it's not legal, or it's not fair. It is corruption kills. And, so corruption is manifested in Ukraine in forced mobilization, in paying off conscription officers, in paying off people to get out, in a whole series of scandals around, mismanagement of defensive fortifications, mismanagement of drones, all these kind of things. So there is a sense that the corruption in the regime is actually weakening the war effort. So Marta was saying that the protesters support the war, but what they're saying is the corruption of the regime is destroying the war and destroying the capacity of the society to realise its sort of effort. So I think there is, so I don't think it's like an astroturfed thing. I mean, if any protest at any time in any society, there's going to be a bunch of people with different motivations and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure there are people who are wanting to manipulate this public sentiment at this particular time. But that's where you get to the second level. So the second level is, the government and the Bankova, the sort of street, the sort of regime. It's like Downing Street in Britain. It's Bankova. And that is clearly a nest of vipers at the moment. And, people have been talking about removing Zelensky, putting someone else in place for, I don't know, a year or two or more at some points. The different people are renowned for being corrupt, and there are different people associated with things. So there's clearly jockeying for power. And some of those different factions, if you like, within the regime are also allied with different overseas interests, the Americans, the British, and the European Union. And then that's the third level of the politics, which is the diplomatic politics, the role of excuse me, those different governments in trying to manipulate the outcomes and trying to get favourable governments in place. But I don't think it's those governments that are bringing people out on the streets. I think it's the emotions of the people in the problems in the society. And those problems haven't suddenly emerged. I mean, there have been minor protests, there's been resistance to, forced mobilisation, all that sort of stuff for months and months and months, if not, maybe a couple of years. But, for whatever reason, it's come up now. And perhaps because there are all these interests in play, it's also given a little bit of a boost by the manipulation of people. But I also think there's a sense in which the authority of the government and the legitimacy of Zelensky is absolutely collapsing. And that's also encouraged people, I guess, to get out on the streets.
It just seemed a bit much. Like, for example,
Yeah.
Are Ukrainians really that prolific in knowing about Sapo and Nabu? And then to have all of these media organizations going after Zelensky at the exact same time. I mean, you had the Kiev Independent, you had all of these Western outlets, like literally hitting Zelensky with article after article after article. Zelensky has betrayed us. Zelensky, I think Owen Jones, I believe, just wrote the thing. It's time for Zelensky to go.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Meaning it's one thing if people came out, let's say naturally, and say, hey, we don't like the fact of this forced conscription, which they don't. You can see people fighting in the streets over it. Or we don't like that there are 1 million dead Ukrainians, meaning the cemetery industry has exploded in Ukraine. If anybody looks at those numbers, it is astonishing. We don't like these things. We don't like the fact that you are now not paying us the stipends that we're supposed to get when our family members die. We don't like the fact that you had Russia holding out our people in a refrigerator with them stinking because you didn't want to pay people the money. And now they've gotten to the point of saying, well, we're not going to pay the money. We're just going to call these troops desertions because they have like hundreds of thousands of desertions. Okay, that sucks. And that's a betrayal in regards to your, let's say, relationship and responsibility between government and person, especially if they're going to give their life for the war. I get that as mechanism and means of protests. Sapo and Nabu, oh man, that is a hard sell for me. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. And this could be the flashpoint.
I think it's like the act that catches fire. I think so. I don't think it's specifically these agencies, but it's seen as, I guess, it's the last straw of the failure of Zelensky to fulfill the dreams. And Marta was telling me that people are now comparing Zelensky to Yanukovych, so the president who was deposed during the Maidan, and so he's sort of seen as emblematic of old corrupt Ukraine sort of thing. And those two agencies are also very much part of the task that Ukraine needs to do to ever qualify for the European Union. And what Marta was saying is the kind of lost hope, the broken dream of the protesters is that it's the European dream of Ukraine. Now, whether that's reasonable, justified, or whatever, but that was absolutely that was partly what was behind the old original, the Euromaidan, etc. It was that hope of been integrated with the European Union rather than the sort of Russian economic zone may have been unreasonable. But now, after 10 years or 10 or 11 years of civil war and actual, interstate war, I mean, people feel betrayed, I guess, and angry. And that is a genuinely powerful emotion. That's the kind of thing that does get people on the streets. But it's not necessarily an emotion that sort of takes people to a coherent political program or, coherent regime change. So that, and it doesn't, at least so far, there doesn't seem to be any more forceful action behind it as there was back in 2014 with the Maidan.
Jeff, that is a lot to process.
Yeah. So it's a complex situation, and apparently there's a sort of a vote in the Rana coming up on Thursday. So, it might develop. But it is clearly unstable with these sort of reports about the British and American intelligence agencies placing in Zelensky. But that's going to be disastrous for Ukraine as well. I mean, and I don't think it's welcomed by the people on the streets necessarily, even though he's seen as the military and all that sort of stuff. I mean, what Marta was saying, it will mean that they'll just be tougher on the mobilisation. It will be about, it will be serving the American, British, and to some degree European interest to keep the war going and to keep, just keep serving things.
But that's what they're doing now. Yeah. And all of this is a disaster. Yeah. I mean, think about it for the moment. Like when this war began, I used to ask the question, what was this for? And the fact that she's now saying this is kind of like Yanukovych. Oh God, that means we're back to zero.
Yeah.
In the way that they're looking at him. And it's like, but you're back to zero with losing 1 million people. Yeah. That's brutal. Like that's...
Well, 1 million people, 7 million refugees, maybe more. God knows what sort of traumas, the disabilities, the injuries, the people who've got carried away with all the noxious ideologies, who, are going to be like the people who got carried away with noxious ideologies in the 30s and 40s, So it's she's very, she's quite clear-eyed about it, and because, her kind of specialty is exposing the sort of neo-Nazis and the extreme rightists and all these kind of people in the Azov battalion. And, on her X account, she, publishes like all the insignias and the symbols and the salutes and the slogans that, go back to, darkest time in European history. And it's just absolutely tragic what's happened in Ukraine. So that's why, that's why I feel, in a way, it's a sort of spontaneous but limited and, not desperate in a sense of hopeless, but, at least people are doing something to try to restore some sense of independent autonomy in their society. But that there's just not the political structure above to organise it, and there's clearly continuing, ongoing, crazy schemes from the British, the Americans, maybe the Europeans as well, as to how to resolve the issue. Because to install, Zelensky as clearly undemocratically installed military governor of Ukraine.
Well, again, we don't know that to be true.
Yeah, I don't know that to be true.
I think the Russians
but it has been speculated a lot, and she was saying that is the speculation on the street. She was also saying that the story is that the former president and chocolate king oligarch, not Mr. Cadbury, but Petro Poroshenko, is is supporting a lot of the protests and may have some documents that are incriminating for Zelensky, which may be released in the next little while to sort of force his hand to some degree. Because you see, corruption is just, I mean, the other thing about the corruption issue is it's so endemic in Ukraine, not just the sort of high-level political corruption that, you know, we all know about, but, you know, at a very basic and ordinary level as well. You know, like paying to prioritise medical treatment, paying to, you know, she was saying everyone in Ukraine knows how much you have to pay to avoid, you know, getting the conscription bus, how much you have to pay to get out of the country, all this kind of stuff. So it's sort of living, it's like, you know, all those cliches of, you know, black market 1920s America, but, you know, to the power of 10.
But if that's true, which it is, then why are they, like, that was the other part to this. It's like, it's not like Ukraine became corrupt. Ukraine was radically corrupt. And at the point where the organizations, all of a sudden, they flip out. Also, Ukraine is not a neutral country, meaning Ukraine is not a sovereign country. Ukraine lost its sovereignty in 2014 when that coup took place. It was clear that the very point of NAPO and NABU and SAPO was in order to create or maintain some level of control over Ukrainian affairs. When, I forget the woman's name, it'll come to me in a moment, she gave the speech in Narada. She was like, we're going to be a colony if these organizations maintain, and then went out to the street, the protests about the corruption, like a complete politician. But she's not wrong. Like Zelensky is not entirely wrong for saying, yes, he's trying to solidify his power base. But his point is kind of like these organizations are Western organizations that are effectively overlooking Ukrainian affairs. And we want to get rid of them. And the West's point of view is like, hey, man, these are corruption organizations. Okay, well, you haven't done a good job if indeed you're a corruption organization. You've been there since 2014. You've done a horrible, horrible job. Like, that was the other reason that it seemed a bit rich, that all of a sudden these people came out to protest at this moment when all of these other things have been taking place. I don't know.
Yeah, true. But it's sort of like, well, you know, what's the straw that breaks the camel's back in the sort of public sentiment, you know? And again, maybe there's just something that's happened there in the mood. Maybe, I mean, she was saying it was actually an ex-war veteran who was the first person to sort of come out to protest, and who's subsequently been sort of, you know, kind of brought in for investigation by the SBU and the intelligence services and that sort of thing. But there are also a lot of protesters out there who are saying, like, you know, my father didn't die for this, my uncle didn't die. They have, you know, these cardboard signs, you know. So, which, I mean, like, I think I heard Mark suggest that these cardboard signs are all, like, you know, a bit of a manufactured effort, which
they did look the same. To be fair,
well, when I looked at them, they were quite irregular. And the other thing is, I mean, it's sort of illegal to protest in Ukraine. So I mean, the fact that these people are sort of doing it and being able to do it is partly a sign that authority is collapsing. I'd heard, I think, Che Bowes say that the various foreign embassies told the government that they must not crack down on these protests, because, I mean, then they really would be, you know, Yanukovych again.
But you would agree with me that NGOs, many government groups, all of these things are still functioning in Ukraine. And in the 2014 protests, the Maidan thing, you had Victoria Nuland handing out cookies. You had U.S. politicians who were going there saying, hey, just keep it up. I mean, it was kind of like what was taking place in Georgia recently, but the government in Georgia was prepared for it because they saw Ukraine as an example of what not to do. Like, it's very weird, the color revolution thing. She may be right. I don't live in Ukraine, right? But
no, same here.
Display done over and over and over again when the West are trying to overthrow governments. But as you point out, the protest hasn't reached a severity that threatens the state.
No.
Which is the issue. Which is why I think Mark may be more right than not.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see in a few weeks. It could
Yeah.
keep going, and it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
But
So,
there is no neo-Nazi muscle. There is no Western figures that have shown up with cookies. Like, those things haven't taken place yet.
and the sad thing is, I just don't see a good outcome, really.
Right.
I mean, you know, authority's going to break down. The West is coming up with stupid games. The NGOs and the foreign journalists, you know, I saw various, you know, kind of pro-West geopolitics channels comment on the Ukraine protests to say, but you see, this is why Ukraine isn't Russia, because people are allowed to protest. Oh, yeah, but they live under martial law, mate.
Right. Right. You've gotten rid of political parties. You've cracked down on the church. You put
I
people in
mean,
prison
like you know,
it's insane.
Marta has been subjected to death threats and rape threats by all these sort of neo-Nazi groups, and also coordinated by the government and Zelensky. So it's a vicious regime. It's really quite. I don't like the word authoritarian, but it is quite authoritarian. But it's breaking down, and the best idea that the West seems to have is to put in place a failed general who will, you know, send more soldiers to the front, which is collapsing.
Dude, I'm curious. Does she realize that? Well, let's see. Do the people of Ukraine realize? Let me ask it that way. That the people who are waving the signs are the people who care about them less. Like, I can be pretty brutal and pretty dark when I'm looking at what's taking place in Gaza, and I see, or even the war in Israel, where the 12-day war, and Israel gets bombed and they drink coffee and say, "Whoo, this is some good coffee." That's brutal, right? That's dark. I've never done that for Ukraine because I've always considered it a catastrophe. The people who voted for Zelensky voted for a peace candidate, which means they didn't want a war. And then all of a sudden they end up embroiled in this First World War styled war with all of these casualties and all these broken people and places getting bombed. Even if Russia is bombing and trying to manage civilian casualties. The other day they sent like 500 drones and they killed like one person. That's astonishing. That means they are intentionally trying not to kill people. You still kill people, right? It's a war. It's a real war. And so I've always seen this as a catastrophe. Whereas you get these liberals waving the flag of Ukraine saying, fight, fight, fight. And people like me saying, this war needs to come to an end. This is outrageous that this is even happening.
Totally.
Like, does she get that?
She does. And you know, she's highly critical of those people. You know, she sort of, you know, I don't know if shame is quite the right word, but she sort of mocks them on Twitter to say all those, you know, brave people on Twitter with the flags in their bios, safe in their sort of university rooms. You know, you go and die on the front if you think it's such a great idea. So yeah, and look, I mean, I've written myself about like Timothy Snyder, who is, you know, he's kind of a historian. I describe him as a lapsed historian these days, which maybe is a bit rich for me, but he largely writes, you know, propaganda pieces really these days. And, you know, a huge advocate of Ukraine, and, you know, has a picture of himself talking to Zelensky and his sort of profile picture on X and all this sort of stuff.
Oh, that's great.
And, you know, he's constantly saying, you know, we've got to do everything possible for Ukraine, and he raises funds and all that sort of stuff, while mouthing all these other kind of platitudes about democracy and freedom and resisting tyranny. But what is he doing? He's supporting a regime that has been clearly centralising power for several years, that is, you know, just vicious and awful, and has fought a war based on, you know, ideologies of hate, really, that have, and Timothy Snyder has promoted that kind of thing himself. So He's, and there's a lot of these people in the West, and I would hope at some point some of these people would have a kind of moral reckoning with what the hell they have done. But unfortunately, one of the lessons I've learnt from history is people don't always take those moral lessons to heart. Sometimes they do, but it's a bit like what you're saying. We're on the precipice of a really disastrous confrontation, and I don't know. I think really feeling the pain of that confrontation might be the only thing that's going to make people really realise what a horrible, horrible moral mistake they've done to send this country to its ruin.
They don't seem to get the reality of it. Like, meaning they don't seem to get that, okay, you can... It's wow. When Keir Starmer was giving a speech one day, and Keir Starmer said something like, "We will defend Ukraine to the end." And they said, and this was when Russia had just shown the Russian missile. And one of the reporters like, "Hey, you did see that missile, right?" That can hit. Okay. And he's like, "But we will defend Ukraine to the end." And people are like, "You're out of your mind." Yeah. Like, do you honestly believe that the Brits, the French, the Germans, the Italians, that all of them are going to die for Ukraine? And that the people are going to be okay with that. And that doesn't seem to be the thing that they're like reconciling. They don't seem to reconcile it. Look, you are moving to the Russian border, not the other way around. Like it's, I think for me, it was the lives that it was based on. And then the catastrophic damage based on those lies. And that all of these people still push those lies. Sometimes I don't even know if they know their lies. Where they would be like, well, I mean, Putin is just trying to take over all of Europe. No, he's not. With what, 150,000 men, he was trying to take over all of Europe. It makes no sense on his face, but they were repeated and repeated and repeated. It blew me away. So I don't, name me one person that had a moral reckoning. I can name one, but I want you to name one.
From history? I mean, well, the first one that comes to mind is Thomas Mann, okay, the great German novelist, who, and I mean, this goes to, I mean, to me, what happened at the start of the Russia-Ukraine war was within the West, there was this war fever. We're just getting out of COVID. Remember, there was the sort of joke that Vladimir Putin should get the Nobel Prize for Medicine because he solved COVID overnight by invading Ukraine. At least it was the joke in some quarters. And people were infected with this war fever. Like, I remember talking to some local political staff and things like that, and they were just, they had blood fever. It was terrifying.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Isn't that just hubris?
Well, but to me, it reminded me of what happened at the start of World War One. That all these intelligent, progressive, peace-loving people were just caught up in nationalistic war fever. There were huge debates in the socialist parties, the progressive parties of the time in Germany and whatever, as to whether or not to support the war. Right. And Thomas Mann was like sophisticated, highly cultured intellectual, the epitome of German high culture, really. And he was caught up in all of this, and very initially very opposed to Weimar democracy and all that sort of stuff. And he had a kind of I was wrong kind of moment, and ended up sort of having a very different attitude to the Nazis when they emerged in the 1930s. So I mean, that is one. And I'm sure if I really put my mind to it, I would probably think of some. But regrettably, I mean, people say this. We often think that, we'd be the one who would stand against the crowd in, during some terrible moment. But the collective emotion gets the better of many, many people. And once it's been consolidated and reinforced, and in our society now just reinforced with this, massive, communications apparatus, government propaganda sort of apparatus, it's very hard to remove it. And there are people who invested their entire professional intellectual credibility in these stories about Ukraine having a glorious past and being the emblem of democracy, and Zelensky being Churchill. And I mean, what are they going to say in a couple of months' time? And what are they going to say when this society, and this is what really worries me, that when the government authority does collapse and the military front line collapses further, as Marta says, Ukraine now is an open-air prison for men. When those authorities collapse, what the hell are people going to do? I mean, they're going to try to get out of the place probably as fast as they can.
Yeah.
So you're going to have disorderly movement of refugees. You're probably going to have the kind of uncontrolled, payback violence. The Azov people will say, we were stabbed in the back and you guys were collaborators. And there will other people will say that the Azov people have destroyed our country and it's about time they paid the cost. So you could have a utterly tragic situation. It's a completely bankrupt society. The European, I think more the American than the European. I think the European governments have a sense of these social problems because a lot of the social problems have been exported to their countries in all the millions of refugees who are there. And they're worried also about the weapons trafficking, the sex trafficking, the people trafficking, the extreme, all those noxious ideologies that are not going to go away. So they're going to be, it's going to be a problem for 10 or more years in Europe, having the sort of the leftover tragedies of this war there. Meanwhile, America will have bailed out and said, we'll protect, some interests that we might have, or we might protect some interests that we might have, and we'll just go off and prove that we're a, glorious army somewhere else.
Forget my brutality. I don't care what happens to Europe on this. They deserve it. Yeah. And yes, I know that's brutal, but let me explain why. Europe has backed, funded, went in with America on this. The Williams-Burns memo back in 2008 makes the point very clear. If we continue to push NATO membership, we are going to create a civil war in Ukraine, something Russia doesn't want to get involved in. Europe was on board for it. All of these countries were on board for it. And I don't buy this war fever stuff. These guys had a geopolitical project where they wanted to expand NATO to the border of Russia, to surround Russia and China and Iran, et cetera. In this case, they were focusing on Russia because from the U.S. point of view, Russia's Nigeria with snow. They're a gas station masquerading as a country. This was all the nonsense that they were effectively saying. Nobody told them to overthrow the government of Ukraine. Nobody told them to back Nazis in Ukraine. I can show you the political stuff here in the United States where they were writing article after article. They're having flag burning ceremonies in Ukraine, a Nazi resurgence in Ukraine. And then the moment that it took place, there are no Nazis in Ukraine. And Europe was like, there are no Nazis in Ukraine. So this is me being brutal. I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
And I agree with you that the weapons that they dumped into the country, the people, the Azov battalions that they celebrated as heroes, like when I give you, what is his name? The one that was working on the Joe Biden secretary, say Anthony Blinken. Anthony Blinken went to a bar in Ukraine that had all of the Nazi guitar. Yeah, and he's playing guitar, and they had to get rid of the Nazi paraphernalia because it was like, hey, that would be impolite. That would look bad.
Then he sang some song, which I can't remember what it was, but apparently it was actually about Americans going over and stuffing the world somehow. Like, it was like, oh my God, this guy is a complete idiot. He doesn't even understand the words that he's singing. And he's just
my point. Like, I'm not trying to be overly brutal, but it's like, Crimea River for stuff that was infinitely for sale. They destroyed that country. They didn't have to do that. Like nobody told them to wish NATO to the war.
But I mean, from my point of view, the principal responsibility for destroying the country lies with the United States of America. I think, I think Europe stuffed things up. But remember what Vicky Newland said in 2013, 2014, whenever it was, when America decided it wanted to put its people in place in the government, if the EU, there has been a contest between Europe and the United States over the economic and political control of Ukraine. So I really believe that the United States should bear principal responsibility for this. But as ever, the United States is, trashing the place and then running off and having another party somewhere else. So
I agree. I do agree.
And as a citizen of the world, with all respect to your American viewers, we are over this sort of crap.
I agree. Look,
I'm sure viewers to your show will understand that point of view.
I agree with everything you just said. You're absolutely right. We are more responsible for this. We were pushing this. We wanted NATO to expand. We wanted all of this stuff. But we wanted to topple Russia, or at the very least expand, Ukraine. Expand Russia, or to extend Russia, so they will be up out. We want all that stuff. I agree with you. You had my perfect agreement. And maybe
the other thing is Britain, and I distinguish between Britain and the US and the EU. And I think part of the complexity of the situation is, I almost see this as like a 5-state war. There's Russia, there's Ukraine, there's Britain, US, and Europe, which is multiple states, but it functions as a single entity to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem at the moment. I think those people are all pursuing, if you like, different ways to end the war, are trying to secure their different interests. And I think Europe, there's more interest, I guess, in Europe ultimately coming to a sort of a long-term rapport with Russia, and to ultimately Europe's actually going to have to cope with most of these social problems. Britain won't, and America won't. So, and Britain and America, what the hell? Why the hell does Britain still have like half a dozen military bases in Europe?
I know.
It's just, someone should just tell that country to,
F off.
F off. As a former colony of Britain, stop it, fellas.
I've appreciated this conversation. I appreciate your insight on this. I'm sorry for my brutality.
That's okay. You've got to be tough about this. Yeah.
I do appreciate it. I really do. Thank you for this, and thank you for the breakdown. It's good getting another take on this, like another point of view of somebody who actually lives there. Wait, does she live there?
No, she does. She did live there. She fled at the start of the war. She has a young son, but she has many, like brothers, sisters, all this sort of stuff, and friends, etc., who are, direct participants. And she's been back since as well, although she can't go back at the moment because she'll be imprisoned.
Yes, or killed. I have a friend of mine who he fled himself trying to get away. Arstovich fled trying to get away. They killed that guy. What was in Italy, I believe. Where they just walked the guy. They've been doing this stuff around the world. Yeah, it's not safe.
Yeah.
Jeff Rich. Jeff Rich is an author, historian, podcaster who has worked for 33 years in government. He's now retired. I'm sorry, Dr. Jeff Rich. Dr. Jeff Rich. He's an author, historian, podcaster who worked 33 years in government. He's now retired, currently lives in Melbourne, Australia. Jeff has spent a lifetime studying history and is now in a knowledge of how historical events can help give context to changing political world that we effectively live in. You can find Jeff on YouTube at The Burning Archive. You can find him on his Substack at jeffrich.substack.com. Jeff Rich has a fantastic website, by the way. The Burning Archive is fantastic. Yeah, I know every time you come on, I say it. I enjoy it immensely. Thank you for this, Jeff.
Fantastic, Jamal. Check you
You
later.
have a good one. Be safe. All right, we're going to go from one damn good guest to another damn good guest. I said I had a damn good show today, and Lord knows I do. Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik is an American human rights, labor rights lawyer, political activist. He previously taught at International Human Rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. But we're going to wag our finger at that university because they were not right and get rid of Dan. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
I'm doing okay. How are you, my friend?
Ooh, you are scratchy. That is a scratch. You may have to cut off and cut back on. No, your video is fine. It's the mic.
It's the mic. Okay, yeah. I'll come back on.
Okay, thank you. Look, while Dan comes back on, shout out to Jeff Rich. Greatly appreciate him joining me. Listen, protect my human rights. I know, right? Look, if you guys dig this content, you find yourself coming back here often, you find yourself watching often, please consider supporting the content. I don't get the opportunity to say it often during the show, but I'll say it now while we have an interlude. You are deeply appreciated for watching. A like, a share. You can support through PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, memberships, buy me a coffee. All of those things are greatly appreciated. Now let me bring my man back on. Talk to me, Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
Much better, much better.
Good.
I don't know why it does that. As soon as you come back on, it's perfect. You doing okay today?
I'm doing okay, all things considered. You know, I mean, what's happening in Gaza, I must say, it impacts, I think, a lot of us. It's really terrible. You know, personally, I'm doing okay, but it's just hard to watch what's happening.
That is an understatement. I mean, like, it really is an understatement. And I have such a difficult time trying to figure out how to cover the story because I cover it so often. And so you kind of end up in a situation of like, okay, I can show videos like this every day, but that doesn't really get you anywhere. It's just bearing witness to traffic. Look at that. And I showed the video yesterday of the kid, he was a child, where Green Beret was telling the story about how the kid had walked like 12 miles to get food. He picked up food off the ground. He was walking back, and Israeli soldiers shot him in the back, or shot him with a bunch of other people as they were throwing flashbang grenades, pepper spray, spraying the crowd, those type of things. I pointed out how they were building a death camp. At this point, Alistair Crook, that's correct, Alistair Crook, for some reason I always want to call him Crawley. Alistair Crook wrote this article, what he said, Jewish country builds death camps, or builds, he didn't say concentration camps.
I think he did say death camps. I saw that. Yeah, I saw the title. I didn't read it, but I saw the title. I think he said death camp. Yeah.
Yeah, in lieu of a genocide. Effectively, they are preparing for genocide. They are building camps in the way that, you know, Germans built camps. And how hard is it to come to the conclusion of saying, hey, well, we've been killing them in mass anyway. Why don't we just make this process a bit easier, since that's what we've been doing? And he was like, how grotesque it is to even say the phrase, and yet it's apt. What's the latest on this? I mean, have you seen, one last point before I bring you in this. Arab states have gotten together and they have come to a conclusion. The problem is Hamas.
Right. I did see that. Yeah.
Arab states call on Hamas to disarm and give up governance in Gaza. Now, Hamas, by the way, has already said, we will do that. Like, meaning we will give up this notion of governance. But what they're talking about is you should give this up to the Palestinian Authority. For one, at the point where you are murdering people in mass, it's not about Hamas giving up anything. Israel wants to take it. And they have come to the conclusion with Donald Trump that it will be perfectly okay for them to take Gaza. And so they're moving people into a smaller area, which is by definition a camp. Give me your take on this stuff. I mean, what's the latest on this? And have you seen any movement at all in trying to remedy this issue? Because I have not.
No, I mean, I don't see anything happening really. I mean, the last I heard, first of all, the talk about ceasefires was always an illusion, right? It was always, we were always being gaslit about the ceasefire that was to come, but now even they're open about the fact that there's no ceasefire coming. There, of course, they blame Hamas for that, but whatever, it's not coming. There may be a little more aid trickling in, but obviously it's not nearly enough. And of course, people are pointing out that the people of Gaza have already reached level 5 famine, which means, a lot of people, they can't even eat. I mean, that is to say, if you start eating right away, that will kill you, right? There's something called refeeding syndrome. So, long and short, it's a very desperate situation. I really fear that you're going to see a mass death event, in the upcoming days, where thousands of people are going to just start dropping dead from hunger. That's already started, but I think that will speed up, unfortunately. I must tell you, when you were talking about the kid, I think 12-year-old, or I don't know if they know how old he
I
was,
think
but the
it's
young
12.
Yeah, the young boy who walked 12 miles to get food and then they shot him. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a movie I've seen a few times, and that's Schindler's List. Reminds me of the Ralph Fiennes character. He plays a Nazi, and he just comes out on his balcony and shoots people for sport.
Right.
And
And they were, by the way.
what's that?
They were. I mean, the
It,
Americans who were there admit that that's
said
what
that they're
Hitler was
shooting
doing.
people for sport. They're shooting
No.
kids in the head. It also reminds me of the scene in the same movie with the girl. It's a black and white movie, but the only scene that there's color is a girl in a red dress,
Right.
kind of wandering around in the midst of these killings, and that's what they've created in Gaza. I mean, the irony. I mean, it is the irony of ironies, right? And I'm just struck by that. And I can't, it's hard for me to get over. I have several friends in Gaza that I stay in touch with almost every day. And they're barely holding on. One just had a baby last year. So her baby now is probably, I don't know, maybe 1 year old or something.
Jesus.
They've all lost relatives. One, my dear friend Ola, the one I'm closest to, her brother was killed early in the war, and she was very close to him. She's still mourning that loss. Meanwhile, they're just trying to find food. So to the extent there's food available, like a bag of flour is like $30. Um and it can be higher than that even. It's because of the situation of scarcity. And if you can send folks money there, okay, but just to retrieve the money, they have to spend 50 cents on the dollar to get their money. So if you send them $100, immediately it's just 50, just to get it out. And that 50 may get you some flour, may get you a few vegetables, and that's it. And so that's how people are living, if they're living at all. Again, my friends are saying they have one meal a day, sometimes no meals a day. So it's just extraordinary. And of course, no water. There's people haven't showered for weeks or months. um it really is. It's something. It's something that we've allowed this to happen and to continue going on. And I don't see any end in sight. I don't see an end in sight. And this idea that even that they're going to push people out of Gaza, I don't see it. I mean, people want to leave now. Almost all the people I know there want to leave. They can't leave. There's no way out. They're not pushing people out. They just want to kill them. I mean, the hatred towards these people is incredible. It's just extraordinary.
When I make this argument that these guys act like Nazis, and people say, "Oh, that sounds so impolite," dude, they act like Nazis. They do. And if you read through World War II literature, the sadistic nature of Nazis towards Jews, Russians, Poles is other level. Like, you wouldn't think that you could treat an animal like that, let alone another human being. That is the way they behave towards that group. And I want to ask a question after I show this video. This is Donald Trump asking about being asked like, hey, do the fact that you have skeletal ghosts of human beings walking around, falling over, dying, children who are like wisp of themselves, does that bother you? Now, personally, I think Trump's a sociopath. So I don't think these things bother Trump. I think he's a degenerate of a human being. I think Joe Biden was a degenerate human being. If these people get cancer and have a horrible death up until the point where they break hell well open, it wouldn't be enough. That's my point of view. As again, I can be pretty dark on this stuff. This is Trump. We'll let you know. And mind you, again, let's be very clear. Trump is doing this. He's doing this. The moment that the money stops, the moment that the support stops, all of this stops. So anything that comes out of his mouth about starving kids, short of the U.S. being responsible, is a lie. This is Trump.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you know, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded.
So if you are pressuring Israel, a colony that you give basically all of the money necessary for them to murder all of these people, starve all these kids to death, shoot kids in the back, all of this stuff is clear at this point, then you are rewarding Hamas. That is still his argument to this day, despite all of these other groups, even Jewish scholars coming in saying, hey, this looks a lot like a genocide. In Germany during the Second World War, after the Nazi regime fell, you got maybe one generation, and then after that generation, there was this look back on people saying, I can't believe you did that. Meaning you're looking at your grandfather, you're looking at your dad and saying, I can't believe you were a part of that. You've left this dark mark on us that we would never be able to erase. And there was this kind of conflict associated with that in the way that they look back at their history and was appalled by it. Do you see that happening in America? Because the reality of it is the newspapers whitewashed it. New York Times to this day whitewashes it. You got the Israeli press, of course, whitewashed it. I don't even know how much they even show of it. The European press whitewashed it. Europeans, for all intents and purposes, backed it. Americans, for all intents and purposes, backed it. And then you get to Israel itself, which may or may not exist. But if it does exist after that, whatever that is there a reckoning that's going to take place on a human level?
I would say there will be, to some degree. There already is. I just read this morning, there is a piece how Jewish youth in the West are really backing off Israel, right? They're disgusted with what Israel's doing. So the Zionists are losing the younger generation of Jews who are looking at their parents and grandparents who supported Israel and wondering, how could you support that, right? So there will be that sort of reckoning. However, I don't believe there'll be the type of reckoning you saw after World War II with Germany. And why is it? Well, first of all, let's face it. Yes, there has been a reckoning against Nazi Germany in the sense that there's a vast consensus that these are some of the most evil people ever, right? Yeah. However, West Germany was never denazified, right? I mean, the first head of NATO was a former Nazi, okay? So even they didn't have a full reckoning. Let's just be very clear about that. But I think you won't even see the same reckoning regarding Israel, and that is because history, well, you know, is written by the victors. And the United States is not going to fall because of what's happening in Gaza. The U.S. will continue on. Europe will continue on. And they will be the ones that will write the history. And so what you're seeing in the media now with the sanitization of what's happening in Gaza, you'll largely see into the future because it's the same people that are going to write that history, right? So I don't think you will see that same reckoning. Now, thank goodness for social media, which didn't exist for a long time, that there will be amongst a large swath of the Western population will amongst themselves agree this was a terrible thing. This was like the Nazis. But again, that will not be the official history, I think. So I don't think you'll see the same reckoning. I think the chances of actual people being tried, like the Nazis were tried at Nuremberg,
Zero.
is slim to none. I don't see it happening. I think Netanyahu, who's pretty sick, will die, before any justice can be exacted against him. And I just don't see Israeli officials being tried in the way the Nazis were. So I guess that my long answer to you is I don't see a full reckoning happening here. I would like to see that, but I just realistically, when you even have most of the Arab countries, again, as you point out, really largely in Israel's camp. I mean,
Yeah.
despite what they might say. How is it that there's going to be a reckoning for this?
Yeah.
And, Russia, you look at Russia and China, they've done nothing. We have to be totally honest about that.
Yeah.
They're not going to do anything. So who's left to do anything? Who is going to exact this justice? No one. I mean, and that's the sad thing. It is the law of the jungle that we're seeing.
So is it that if you're backed by nuclear power, you can pretty much do anything you want? Is that what we're looking at?
Well, yeah, and if you are a nuclear power, which Israel is too, I mean, yeah, I mean, this has been long in the making, Israel's ability to do what they're doing, right? That they were allowed to build nuclear weapons, that they were allowed to do as much as they did to Gaza. I mean, they already had penned Gaza in for years, and already were limiting the amount of food and water that was going in, which allows them to do what they're doing. I mean, this is a turkey shoot, right? I mean, I don't know how many people are left. At one point, you had 2.3 million people enclosed in this small space where Israel could just go in and bomb and murder people at will, and that's even more true now because you even have
Smaller space.
Much smaller space people are being corralled into, and the people are a lot weaker. I mean, a lot of people just want to die at this point. Seriously, I mean, you hear people say that I mean, I would want to die. I couldn't face what these folks are facing. So we are watching something truly terrible, and it won't be the first time that a terrible, terrible thing will happen in history. Those who write the history will just shrug their shoulders. If you look at the murder of the North American Native Americans, for example, which numbers in the many millions, that's very few people lose sleep about that, right? That's been largely whitewashed. Churchill's crimes in India, right, in Bengal, have been whitewashed. So this won't be anything particularly new, except that, the great evil it is an extreme evil, I would say, you know.
I
And
would
but
say,
it also, yeah, I'll just say something else. I mean, you know, the other thing that is also true is that there are really terrible things happening right now in other places in the world. You know, the Congo has been barely covered,
yeah,
where millions of people have been murdered by Rwandan and Ugandan forces that the West has supported. Millions, at least 6 million, maybe 8 million. That war continues, which involves raping women. It's a terror, you know, that war is almost not spoken of.
I do get that. And
Yeah.
I've had, there was a woman who was a friend of mine. Well, she was a doctor, actually. God, I got to stop doing this. Breathtaking. She was very attractive. And her and I used to get into these big arguments over stuff like this. Because her thing was like, well, what about the Congo? And I was like, well, I didn't know anything about, meaning King Leopold's soliloquy, all of that stuff. I knew a historical context, but I didn't know the current thing. It wasn't the focus. It wasn't something that comes
No
on
one
media.
tells you. It's not
Right.
covered.
It's very
There was a
quiet.
Holocaust of 6 million people killed in a fairly short time during
Yeah.
the Clinton administration, and the Clinton administration helped set the whole thing up. And yet Bill Clinton is still at large. Susan Rice is still at large and even had a position in the Biden administration. She was very critical to all that. You know, so great crimes are committed in the world where there's no reckoning. And, you know, this is why people have religions, because they hope that in the next life there will be a reckoning, right? That's the only solace people can have in this type of situation.
So only military force.
Well, that's what's happened. Yeah, there is no rule of law. There is, I mean, and let's face it. I mean, to the extent there was any, it has died. It has died on the shores of Gaza. I mean, it has been murdered. There is no rule of law.
I would say one difference is social media. Like in the old days, some rando would write a book, and that would be the history of whatever. And in these days, I can go to my webpage and pull up William Burns' memo in 2008, just in a heartbeat. Like, meaning the proliferation of information right now, especially with this kind of diversification of it on social media. Yeah, some of these people are whack jobs, but you also are able to get channels, information, data, historical context that you could never get before. And all of these crimes, there is no photo or there is no video of Native Americans being slaughtered that I'm aware of. There is video, volumes of it, millions of videos of Israelis having fun, murdering children. Okay, that's a different animal. Like, I don't know any videos of Nazis murdering people in death camps. I have plenty of them, of Israelis shooting babies that they call dangerous, starving millions with skeletal frames, walking, you know, or dying in their mother's arms. That is a different animal. That is harder, from my point of view, to hide. So I may accept your point of view. Like, if you're thinking of Israel is just little America, right? And America was able to commit a genocide and then follow that up with slavery. And then 400 years later, well, we can tell people what to do now because we have, our morality is just so fantastic.
Yeah, we're the good guys now. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the good guys. But I don't know, the world doesn't see that. The world doesn't even believe that. And I think the majority of the population of the world looks at Zionists, if not Nazis, as sociopaths, as psychopaths in the way that they behave. And by the way, they're raised to be that way. Like, I had Jen, what is her last name? Jen, it'll come to me in a moment. Oh, Perlman. She was raised as a Zionist. And she talks about how it is an indoctrination. You're taught that Arabs are animals, the Arabs are trying to kill you, et cetera, et cetera. I remember having another guest on, it'll come to me in a moment, the rabbi, where he was talking about how as children, they take people to death camps and saying, look at what happened to you. Look at what happened to you. Like, they're programming you in a certain, almost like a Nazi youth mindset. So many of these people, when they grow up, this is their frame of reference of the world. You almost have to be denazified. I don't know what to do about that. Like, I don't know how to. As I pointed out to him, I was like, well, yeah, but Black people don't act the way about slavery. And he was like, well, you guys aren't programmed that way, in the way that they are. I don't know how you deprogram them. I don't know how you, and you have these lunatics walking around with nukes. Like, that is an astonishing problem for the world. And by the way, a problem for the world that at some point the world needs to get to the point of saying, we can't let that happen again. But then it becomes, okay, how do you not let that happen again? You're effectively saying no hegemons. I don't know how you do that. It's complicated. It's just, I mean, look, I think you agree with me. I've had, Sarah Bills was on the show one day, and her and I got into this argument about civilization clash. And, I have a Star Trek argument about this stuff. Leave countries alone, leave them to their devices, ensure that people have the things they need, and they wouldn't necessarily want to go to war. You create abundance, and you create world abundance. You allow people to be free and everything else. She was like, you're out of your mind. If you leave people to be free, they're going to be Lord of the Flies. They're going to be killing each other. I think I'm right on that. I don't think she is, but love her to death. She's fantastic.
Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm largely I'm an anti-interventionist. I largely think the interventions in other countries have made those countries worse.
Yes.
Have set those countries back in terms of progress.
Yes. Leave them to their devices. They will be back.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Iran, I mean, if we had not overthrown the Prime Minister Mossadegh in 1953, where would they be today?
Right.
Where would Chile be if we didn't install Pinochet? I mean, you can go on and on and on. Although I will say, in this case, in the case of Gaza, I would support a military intervention to stop Israel. Yes. I really do think
international law allows it, right?
Yes, because of the genocide that's being committed. And I actually did a little video this week. I think the model is what Cuba did in Southern Africa. Very few people know that Cuba intervened in Southern Africa in the 70s and 80s and helped liberate Southern Africa, helped overthrow apartheid. And that's a history that very few people know about, right? Mm-hmm. And we need that now. I think if Fidel were alive today, he would have sent his troops in already. The Yemenis are ready to do it. They have all these troops trained. They just need a land bridge to get in. They would have to go probably through Saudi Arabia, which won't let them, but they're ready to go in. And the time for that is now. I mean, that something like that has to happen.
If indeed there was a military intervention, I guess the question would be, how would that even work? And before even the military intervention thing, I mean, Turkey still gives them oil. China, Russia don't get involved. And I think China still sells them stuff, even on that level. There seems to be a lot of bellicosity from the world without any real action in that bellicosity.
Yeah, there's nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. And again, even aid, why aren't there flotillas of aircraft carriers being sent in to Gaza? Why isn't Russia and China sending in flotillas that are backed by military, naval battleships being sent into Gaza? I don't understand why that's not happening. It just baffles me that the world has not done, again, the minimal, even just to get aid into there. You have these citizen flotillas where 20 people will go in a little ship and they're just captured immediately, right? But why aren't states sending in military-backed aid? I don't understand it. I just don't understand it.
One last question. You're the United Nations. I mean, you're an international lawyer. If you would think, like, you get these token things of France, we're going to recognize the state of Palestine. Okay, thanks, right?
Or and where's that state going to be? In Gaza on a hellscape? Exactly. I mean, thanks for that. Yeah. Mhm.
Same thing with the UK, but this is just political pressure. This is
It's
population.
actually it's political cover my ass. I mean,
Yes.
this is a nothing. I mean, again, all these things should have been done a long time ago. Yeah, but go ahead.
Right. No, I agree with you. It's a cover my ass. It's a Joe Biden thing, right? But Joe
Yeah.
Biden is like, oh, I'm working tirelessly in order to blah, 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 blah. And come to find out, Israel is like, God put Joe Biden in that office to protect Israel. That's the way they looked at it, because Joe Biden didn't do squat, didn't pressure us on anything. And what it made clear was that if Joe Biden would have did what typical presidents did and say stop, they would have stopped. Which means their impunity came from this idea that America's not going to get involved. That's all we care about. Let's go. Let's kill a lot of people. Let's murder. Let's rape. Let's pillage, etc. And let's come up with the propaganda that we effectively need, that Western media and everything else is going to carry as we go about doing this. That is the way they looked at it. It only takes a U.S. president to say stop, and it stops.
Of course.
Which is why I call Trump a degenerate, because we don't want to help Hamas by feeding babies. And it's just outrageous. Why doesn't the UN get involved in this? The UN has the capability of saying we're going to ostracize Israel. We're going to make them a non-state at this point, considering everything that's taken place. But they don't do that. America carries that much weight in the UN General Assembly.
Well, they don't, though. I mean, they get outvoted all the time in the General Assembly. They don't have a veto power there. They do in the Security Council. And there could be, some people are pushing for a uniting for peace resolution in which the General Assembly could order military action or other action to end this. So you're saying, why don't they do that? And again, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know why. Even with the Hague group that met in Bogota, they didn't call for that. They didn't say, oh, we're going to sponsor a uniting for peace resolution, right? I don't hear any state. I have not heard one state party to the UN say they're going to back a resolution, uniting for peace resolution to intervene in Gaza. So why that's the case, I cannot tell you. I don't know why.
Would ethnic cleansing be better? Meaning the people just leave. And I know you said they're not allowing them to leave because there's no way to leave too, per se. I mean, Egypt is not opening.
Well, but again, but that's not even the point. They're just not letting people leave. I mean, obviously Europe could take some folks, and obviously ethnic cleansing is better than genocide. Obviously people being alive is better than them being dead. I mean, that's an obvious point.
Right.
It would be a terrible thing. I mean, again, I hate to be kind of put on the spot there, but obviously people, I want those people's lives to be saved. I don't think it should come to ethnic cleansing.
Agreed.
But I don't know what's left in Gaza for them now.
It is a brutal question. I agree.
Yeah, it's not, but on the other hand, let's be honest, Israel did this to them, and so they should be given land in historic Palestine, even if it's not within Gaza. I don't care where it is. I mean, in the end, Israel, the state of Israel, has to be defeated. And those folks in Gaza need to be compensated for what has been done for them. With land, with homes, within historic Palestine. That's what I'll say. That's what I think should happen.
Well, if Israel attacks Iran again, you may get your wish.
Well, it could happen, and they seem to be gearing up for that. So
yeah, they're going to bite off more than they can chew on that one. Daniel, man, great breakdown. You always give a break.
Oh, well, thank you. You're very kind. Thank you.
Well, it's true. You do. And it's morbid, but it's reality. It's kind of what's taking place. And I think the key point is Israel needs to be defeated. Yeah. And, whatever that means, Zionism. I do agree with one of my former guests that made the point of saying Zionism is toast. Agreed. I mean, it's a battered ideology. Somebody can try to carry that mantle all they want. I don't know if that works. Whether that leads to the destruction of Israel because of what is taking place here, I don't know. Whether they've overextended, whether their economy can keep it up, whether, as you point out, the people in the West have started to turn against what has been taking place. I don't know. But if this was 400 years ago, I would agree with you that there is no reckoning. Yeah, I don't know. That's a morbid thought, that there's not, that you could just get away with this and just skate even in modern times.
Well, yeah. I mean, we see it happen. I hope not, but we shall see.
Yeah. Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik is an American human rights, labor rights lawyer, political activist. He previously taught international human rights at the University of Pittsburgh. By the way, your books. Please tell the audience your books. You've written.
Yeah, so the one that's currently out is The Case for Palestine, Why It Matters, Why You Should Care. And I have a new book coming out with a co-authored with Jeremy Kuzmarov with a foreword by William Oliver Stone.
Really?
Yes. Called Syria, Anatomy of a Regime Change. And that will be coming out October 1st.
Oh, I need to check that one out. Because that is so contentious. Like,
yes.
You have people who, it's the Russians' fault. Oh, the Iranians abandoned us. The technology was used. I am looking forward to that book.
Great. Thank you.
For this man. You be safe, okay?
You too.
All right. Dan Kovalik, the man is fantastic. I'm going to go to my next guest. In fact, I have a really good set. In fact, wow, there he is. There he is. We're waiting on Colonel Wilkerson, but that's okay. We can start. Colonel can join us. How you doing? I'm just going to say Chief Fritz. Is that okay?
That is perfect. That is the official title of my rank. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're good.
My dad's nickname was Chief. And that was his nickname. People know him as Chief. Chief Fritz. And just to give your bio while we wait on Colonel Wilkerson, Chief Dennis Fritz is a retired Commander-Chief Master Sergeant for the United States Air Force, formerly Director of the Eisenhower Media Network, with a mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as the principal senior advisor to 4-star commanders of Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held additional duty of senior enlisted advisor to the command of North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. He is author of Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. It's funny, the last time you were on, or time before last, the guests who came on after you was sitting there with glee saying, oh my God, I have that book, and pulled the book off her bookshelf in order to show it, saying how good that book was.
I think I did see it as I was signing off, and I was very honored for her, especially, when I look at her background and the knowledge that she brings. And I was really honored that she was excited to have the book. And I'm thinking and hoping that she got a lot out of it, as most will, as the feedback that I'm getting. Because like I tell you, Jamal, as you know, that it was really the beginning of what's going on now, indirectly, a war against the Palestinian people. That, deadly betrayal. And what originally, if we wait for Larry to come on, what really prompted me to write the book, that deadly betrayal, 4,500 military men and women from the U.S. died in a war based on a lie, WMD lie, on behalf of Israel. And thousands, 100,000 more is happening in Gaza right now. We seem to forget it happened in Iraq as well. Yeah. Maybe not through starvation that's going on now, but the killings that are going on now, the brutal killings that are happening in Gaza, likewise, it happened in Iraq as well. And so that's what prompted me to write that book. And as we go into now, the present tense, we went to Iraq on a WMD lie. Likewise, what's happening right now in Iran on a nuclear weapons lie on behalf of Israel. I'm glad I get this opportunity, Jamal, to say this for Larry, because my good friend. I'm always happy to be with him. But I must tell you, I'm past the stage of being angry now. I just don't know what other words to describe. And I'm going to say some words here. I look at my particular Congressman, Steny Hoyer, here in Maryland. I look at, okay, people that look like me, Akeem Jeffries and Cory Booker. I'm so sick and tired of them. I call them low down, dirty bombs for allowing this to happen. These members of Congress do not represent me, and I hope you don't feel like they represent you or any other American, because they are low down, dirty bombs. This is as strong as I want to get, because I want to say other words, to allow the killing, the massacre, and the starvation. And if you allow that to happen because you want to stay in power and be somebody, low down, dirty bombs, think how they value us. And I hope all of us Americans jump on board. I don't care. And look, I'm on the, this may shock, I don't care. I'm on the Marjorie Taylor Greene train right now. At least I don't agree with her on our domestic politics, but she is right from her main perspective. Tucker Carlson, right from her main perspective. And we Americans need to speak up now, because we are complicit. Because these people that so-called represent us, who really represent themselves and the oligarchs, they're making money and wanting to stay in power at the lives of innocent women and children.
Well, you know, Obama, Cory Booker, some of the Democrats have put a cover your ass statement out.
Oh, that's all it is.
Yeah, that's all it is.
And Cory Booker trying to hide behind a picture with doggone. I'm sure you've seen that. That's gone viral, where when Bibi Netanyahu last visited and Cory Booker was in that picture, you know, others were smiling to be with a killer, and Cory Booker tried to hide. That's what you got from. That's fake. That's playing politics. You're complicit until you come out strongly, as I just did, and demonize this what it is. It is illegal. It's inhumane. And for our Congress and this administration to allow this is just, and I call it like it is. I want to be street language now. It is low down dirty.
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the other Democratic Congress members, because they're trying to act like, you know, let's be very clear. This started under Joe Biden. And
absolutely. The so-called proud Zionists.
Yes. Yes. As he calls himself.
Yes. And like that's going to be a badge of honors. That's a low down dirty bomb. And let me just say this. Joe Biden, I'm just getting a lot out right now. The little time you have for you guys on stream today, that's why I'm getting this all out right now.
No, you're fine.
Joe Biden's administration was probably the most brutal and killing American administration we've ever had, because it started under him. He let it happen. He lied about what was happening. He didn't try to do anything about it. And he marched himself out there to say he's a proud Zionist. Like that's supposed to be a badge of honor. No, you're a killer, Joe Biden. And I really mean that as a Democrat.
Agreed. Let me bring in my next guest, Colonel Wilkerson, Lawrence Wilkerson. He is distinguished visiting professor of, for some reason, that is not right. That is not right. You're no longer, or are you, the distinguished?
I left in 2021.
That's what I thought. Okay. Former distinguished visiting professor of government and public policy at the College of William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He also taught 6 years at the University Honors Program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He is also probably best known as retired United States Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff for the United States Secretary of State, Colin Powell. For some reason, I remember this stuff in my head, and when it doesn't sound right, I correct it. How are you doing this morning? You doing okay today?
I'm another day older and another day closer to the grave. Other than that, I'm okay.
That is all of us.
Stop that. Larry, I don't like to hear him say that.
That is all of us. Yeah, that is universal.
Hey, Jamal, before we jump, I'm so glad I got all this out. Larry know how I feel, so I'm glad. Larry, you probably missed me at my worst, which you've seen before. But I must tell you, Jamal, Larry came to your defense, you know, as analysts and things, you know, as I always tell folks, I give assumptions, opinions, and facts. And when I don't know the facts, I go out there and check with other analysts and talk to folks. You beat me down so badly about doing the Iran-Israel conflict where you say, come on, Chief. You know Iran can knock down one of those carriers. You know that. Even I sometimes go back and look at comments sometimes just so I can see what audience is saying in case I missed something. Even one of your audiences say, hey, why don't Chief Fritz, he know Iran can knock down one of those carriers. I say, well, no, I think they'll be evasive. So my good friend Larry, who's participated in war gaming and talked to others, he said, well, Dennis, you know Jamal is right. You know, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you can Larry came to your defense. So I wanted to tell you that Larry, hey, Dennis, you know, hey, that Jamal is right. So, you know, we've done the war game. And so you gotta let Jamal have that one. You gotta.
I
Hey,
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I
I
wanted to
deeply
get that out.
appreciate that. I like being right, so I appreciate that.
Well, all warfare, especially warfare at sea, is a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
But the odds are stacking up heavily with China, with Russia, with Iran versus carriers. And I think most of the surface Navy is absolutely in a myth that these things are going to survive. They aren't. And all they had to do was look at Eisenhower and other carriers that ventured forth in the Red Sea against Al-Ansar, the Houthis, to understand that their day has passed.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have, had they wanted to, probably, they could have probably done irreparable damage to one of the carriers that we put in the Red Sea. We also put carriers on. No Navy admiral that I ever knew in my some 30 odd years, 10 of them really associated with the Navy, would ever have put a carrier in the Persian Gulf. It's just too dangerous. The water's very shallow. You could sink that carrier with a mine or a Wycoming torpedo. You don't need sophisticated missiles to sink it. So no Navy admiral with a brain would have ever put a carrier in the Persian Gulf. Now we've done it twice on the orders of a Marine Corps Central Command commander. Now there's your real dilemma. Why are Marines ordering Navy carriers into the Persian Gulf?
It's tripwire. I don't think they believe that it's kind of like, well, the U.S. would attack Iran because the U.S. doesn't believe that Iran is going to respond in force. Meaning they don't believe they're going to fire.
I think you're right. There's a lot of wishful thinking there. And to a certain extent, there's a strategic grounding for it, because Iran really would be insane to a certain extent to start a war that the United States had to come into. They don't want to do that. They realize there'd be no winner of that. We'd both be losers. And so they don't want it to happen. And we keep pushing them.
Right.
Right. And Jamal, the reason I bring that up, because we're not out of the woods yet. Bibi Netanyahu is going to find some way to take that last piece, which is, the 7 countries that you heard Wesley Clark had mentioned in the past. Iran being that last, and that's in the book Daily Betrayal, talking about that. And Bibi's not going to let that go, and so he's going to push us into this war. And the reason I bring it up after talking to Larry and other analysts, we're going to head in that direction. As I mentioned, 4,500 military men and women died in the Iraq war over a span of years. All it takes, one of those carriers, you have a minimum of 5,000 personnel, Marines, Navy, sailors, and other contractors and support that is going to be impacted if one of those carriers are hit in a future war with Iran.
But they have to know that if Iran sends a span of hypersonic missiles, that even if they can't necessarily win an overarching war, and I don't even know if that's true, those things are gone. I mean, that's assuming, let's say you could take down 1, let's say you could take down 2. Russia's been sending 700 drones. Like, this seems to be this kind of new version of warfare where these kind of capabilities of, okay, even if I could take down 400 drones, can I take down the last 200? That's astonishing.
But you have to put in your strategic calculation the fact that you're attacking the empire and you're attacking a nuclear weapon state. Ultimately, that is a deterrent, a big deterrent for any state.
Agreed. No, I agree with that, which is why I don't think Iran has attacked. But the problem is you can't necessarily allow any state, to continuously attack you without you responding. I mean, when Iran was going after Israel, the first time it was theatrical. The second time it was a warning. The third time, okay, we're out for blood. And even then they were restrained.
This time it will be if Netanyahu succeeds in reigniting the war, and even if he does bring the United States in, reluctantly, I think, from what Trump has said, even if that happens, I don't think Iran is going to give up. Then I think we're going to be in for a hell of a war, and we're going to lose ultimately. Iran may lose too, ultimately, but you don't want to start a war. Both sides are going to lose.
That's true. Hey, Jamal, I know I probably took us away from what you probably wanted to talk about, but I just wanted to get to that because that's just so urgent right now when you talk about the carriers, and I just want to come back and give you your flowers because yeah, exactly. But the other thing I want to mention when we talk about the carriers, when Larry mentioned that, hey, it'll be a war that we both lose, even though quote the Americans say we won because we can destroy Iran, but they can do a lot of damage not only on the carriers, but we just have to look at Qatar, Bahrain, and all the other personnel that we have in that region. That we would take some heavy losses and casualties, and so we must continue, as Larry and I are trying to do now, is to prevent that war because it will be a travesty. And another thing I will mention, we've talked about before in the past as well, that I've been talking to folks about. I'm on record as saying that it would be prudent right now for Iran to go ahead and build a nuclear weapon now, and I know Larry and I have had this discussion. He may want to add something, he may know something about it. I think it would be prudent on their part as a deterrence.
No, I agree 100%. And I do think that perhaps Arachi, the foreign minister, and the president are dissembling when they say they want to go back to negotiations. They're pulling the same trick on us that we pulled on them. We lured them into being relaxed and then assassinated many of their leaders and attacked them. I think they may be doing the same thing back to us. One thing I've learned over the last 30, 40 years dealing with the Persians is they're shrewd people, very shrewd people. And they will let you get away with things until their back is against the wall or they feel like it's no other way.
Right.
So build a nuclear weapon and present it to us as a fait accompli as we are engaged in diplomacy and turn the table on us. That would be a very shrewd thing to do, and they can do it. They can do it. They can even test deep enough underground like the North Koreans did, and we wouldn't even detect it. When the North Koreans did their first nuclear test, we got a notice from the seismic center in Geneva, which told us there was an unusual seismic activity, and they weren't quite sure what it was. We got the geo coordinates on that seismic activity and said, whoa, this is where we expected if North Korea were to do a test, they would do it. But we didn't detect it. It was only when they did a second one and we were ready and had everything alerted that we detected they had done a second test. Iran could do that and then present it as a fait accompli to the region and the world. We are a nuclear weapon state.
And if they want a precedent, just take a look at Libya and Gaddafi, what happened there when they gave it up. And then now look at, as Larry mentioned, North Korea. And look where they are. We will not mess with them. I guarantee you that.
I want to get both of your takes on this. And Chief Fritz, let me start with you. I think the last time that we talked, I pointed out that I did think that Israel was going to attack, that the pulling back of forces and all this other stuff. And then a lot of people who I talk to say, yeah, but that's irrational. They're going to get hit. And that's always my thing, too. It's like they will get hit. Whatever they think of Iran has been building up for a war with the United States for like 20 years. And the guests that I've had on from Iran would say, we are less concerned about Israel than we are with the United States. We've been preparing for the U.S. Israel is a country of 8 million people. We're less concerned. And yet, they are most likely going to engage into another war. I mean, they didn't have the air defense. The air defense that they did have wasn't capable of stopping many of the especially advanced missiles that Iran had at its disposal. So just as a flat fact, Iran has the capability of decimating Israel if indeed it takes off the restraints that it has because it doesn't necessarily want to end up in this Samson option. If Israel knows that, why would they still attack? Because I do think they are probably going to try to get around to attacking. Is it just the thought that they can always pull the U.S. in? And even if you can get the U.S. in, they're still going to get battered. Why would they do that?
Well, that's been proven already, and they're willing to make that sacrifice. You got to understand, as I mentioned before, Jamal, this goes back decades of this plan to take out the 3 primary countries at the time, was Iraq, Syria, and Iran, the 3 major countries that they could not, bully around. And you got to understand, we're dealing with, I hate to be quite frank, we're dealing with mad people, madmen. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu and even their own former Mossad leader has said that Bibi Netanyahu sees himself as the Messiah. And so that is madness there, and of course, as you stated earlier, they see as pulling us in and we're going to back them. They may be able to survive, if you will, and to get their final goal and accomplishment of taking out Iran. Now, you mentioned something earlier about, they know that they can be taken out. Be quite frank, think about this. If it wasn't for us, if it wasn't for some other Western countries coming in with some defense systems, they would have suffered more damage. And oh, by the way, they also got support, and I'm going to say this, unfortunately, from Jordan and Egypt and some other countries there. And so if they didn't have that, they would have been in trouble already.
Colonel Wilkerson?
Well, I think Dennis is right. I think we are dealing with a megalomaniac now. And you can see it as you watch him deteriorate. Just watch him when he's giving talks now, particularly in English. He is beginning to look a lot like Trump in terms of physical condition and the characteristics that demonstrate that he's not got it all together anymore. Think back to Hitler. In the early days of Hitler, you can say a lot of things about him that are derogatory, but he wasn't stupid. He was so smart politically and internally to Germany that he managed to get disparate elements who thought all along that any time they tired of him or thought him a danger, they could get rid of him, especially the old Prussians. And they lost because he was so smart. He played them. And he was successful. He was successful in Czechoslovakia. Then, most dramatic of all, and this solidified Germany behind him, he was successful in the spring of 1940 when he overran France in a minimal amount of time and established a government there for Germany, both the Vichy government in one part and then the German occupation in the other part. Hitler was a smart man. But fast forward to the time of the counteroffensive in the Ardennes in 44-45, and then to the time leading up to the bunker, and Hitler turns into essentially a babbling idiot. And that's what Netanyahu is looking more and more like. And I'll tell you something else. That's what Donald Trump is looking more and more like, too, especially when he's talking about the situation in Gaza. He's so detached from it and so departed from reality that one has to wonder, not lying anymore, he really believes some of the stuff that he's putting out. So does Bibi. And then you've got the other element operating with Bibi. He's toast. He's gone. If he fails dramatically in anything at all, in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Syria, in Lebanon, anywhere, if he fails, he's gone. He's gone, and he's probably gone to prison and a disreputable end to his political career. So war is the only thing that sustains him. So look for more of it.
Let me just say this, Jamal. Let me just mention one other thing.
Please.
Bibi is past his time. His rhetoric is old now. He cannot lie like he used to. You know why?
Yeah.
Because we have the social media. He doesn't have the mainstream media in his hands now where he can go out there on mainstream media and say, there is no starvation in Gaza. We're not starving them. But yet now we have social media and people like yourselves to be able to expose that we can see with our own eyes. Bibi, you're telling a bold-faced lie. We've seen it.
But correct me if I'm wrong. He did fail in Iran. I mean, he went to war, with several objectives, with the United States backing those objectives.
But Jamal, you won't find many Israeli citizens of Israel, that half of Israel that is Israeli Jew. You won't find them believing that, because his hold on them is so tight and their wishes for his success are so ardent that you can't break in there. Maybe one or two on the periphery, like, for example, these two human rights groups in Israel that have now come out and condemned, very powerfully condemned this campaign of starvation as a warfare instrument. But basically, he's still got the bulk of the Jewish population of Israel behind him.
And part of it, you got to think about it. As a prime minister, that's all they've known. Think how many times he's been in the position for so many years.
Teflon.
Yeah.
What would it take? So it would take a failure, effectively, to dislodge him.
A colossal.
I mean, let me ask you this.
You were right to kind of highlight what Iran did to them as a possible failure, but they hid it. They're still hiding it.
They
They
still
still
hide
have not told their people the truth about the damage that was done to them.
The only time you saw BB, as you heard me mention before, is when that hospital had some collateral damage, and he came out and exposed that. But all the other hits, you have not heard a word, which I understand. You know, you don't want your enemy, so-called, quote, to know the damage they actually did and accuracy and all that. But there are people, not just us in the outside world, but his own people don't know the damage that Iran did, infrastructure-wise.
And part of that is because Iran was very circumspect. Israel's a very small place, of course, but they were very careful to hit military targets.
Exactly.
They didn't hit civilian targets except when the military target was cheek and jowl with it, which the Israelis had done in some places. So, you know, he's still fooling his people.
Should Iran have hit more targets? Because you're right, they were circumspect. Yeah. They wanted a sanitized moral war, which as an American, that's not kind of the way we fight our wars.
Well, I don't think Iran really wants a war. I don't think they even want a war with Israel.
They're on record.
But yeah. They just, you know, how many wars has Iran started in the last 100 years?
No, I accept that. But everything that they've done up to this point has led to the war. Meaning every action of pragmatism has been accepted as weakness. And that has been with Russia and Ukraine, that has been with Israel all the way through all of these conflicts that they've stumbled on.
With Israel, it's manufactured, though.
Right.
It is manufactured. It's not real. And I think you're hearing from people in the region, in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, in Georgia, in other countries in the region that are concerned with what's happening, because one thing is it's impacting that desire to build that other trade route along the Persian Gulf, land-based route. They are hearing and understanding what Iran did. And so their calculus is now changing with respect to Russia, China, and Iran, because they see Iran as not only being supported by Russia and China, but also being able to handle its own situation. They didn't know that that was the case before. They bought the propaganda. They bought the invincibility of the IDF and of Israel. They bought all that, a pig and a poke they bought. Now they understand because they got good intelligence on what Iran actually did to Israel. So now you have a whole different situation in the region with people thinking about their alliances and their friendships, their trade relations and everything else. You got a real mess brewing with Erdogan playing in it, with Armenia and Azerbaijan playing in it, with other countries around the region watching that playing, with Russia on top of it all, soon as they're done in Ukraine, and that'll be shortly, militarily speaking, and they'll have focuses elsewhere. They'll take care of that situation too, and we won't be able to do a thing about it, and Iran will be their partner in the process.
Chief Fritz, give me your take on that. I mean, because it does seem to be shuffling alliances in the region. I mean, the corridor that the United States is talking about purchasing, that's one that is obviously a threat to Iran, and yet Armenia protests currently. Oh, we're not really planning that. Okay, I don't believe them. I don't believe them. Do you see this kind of anti-Iran axis forming? Israel, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, potentially Armenia, weirdly enough, where they seem to be joining forces, not to mention the Quisling governments of the Arab states seem to be wanted, especially from the standpoint of the Abraham Accords. I know those are two different things, but I'm saying if they get this Abraham shield that Donald Trump is talking about, plus you get this kind of odd alliance between Ukraine for however long Ukraine exists, Israel, Azerbaijan, which seems to be joining together, and Turkey, weirdly enough, even though Turkey likes to protest that it has nothing to do with Israel.
Turkey's role right now is becoming conspicuous, and Turkey's role is to speak one language and do another.
Something else, yeah.
Erdogan loves to speak about his affinity for the Palestinian population and about his desire to keep Syria free and all that. But Erdogan is a member of NATO, we have to remember, and he hasn't backed away from that membership. And Erdogan is playing two games. He's still selling major amounts of oil and gas to Israel. He's still got contracts he's executing with Israel. He's doing all this on the sly and hoping his people, especially those who support him, don't know about it. But they do increasingly know about it. So Erdogan's walking a tightrope right now, too. And Armenia and Azerbaijan, of course, in particular, are watching that from the perspective of what Turkey might not be able to do now. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons they might not be able to do it is Iran has proven it can handle its own portfolio.
Hey, and let me just mention, Jamal, I'll just say this, add to this particular conversation. Iran may have more friends than we think.
Yes.
And yeah, so I just want you to think about that.
Powerful friends. Powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And something that Larry alluded to earlier when he said they're showing their capability. You ready for this? And we know they're doing it on their own right now.
They were.
But that's what I'm talking about. In the past, what's happening now. That's why I say they may have more friends. They're doing it on their own. This past tense, of this last time. Now, they may have more friends than what you can imagine. The other part of this, too, on the world stage, and when you look at it, when you were talking about, you seem like they're holding back. As Larry alluded to and said, they don't want war. Right. They have not been pushing war. It's been Israel that's been pushing this war. And guess what? All these wars have been based on fabrications and lies. One thing, it's already been proven. Iraq had no WMD. The rationale after that, during the Iraq war, they were going to go to Syria next in deadly betrayal, and they were going to use the fabrication of chemical weapons in Syria.
Yes.
Next, it was going to be Iran and their nuclear program. They're all lies. And as Larry stated, who has Iran attacked? They say, rhetoric, disinformation. You notice this. They always used to use the Iranian-backed Houthis. Why? That was to demonize them. They're the most source of terrorism in the Middle East. No, they have interest because people like the West and the United States in particular are in their backyard. They're not in our backyard. We're in their backyard trying to control where they live.
And let me just add that the greatest sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East right now is Israel. Bingo. What are they doing in Gaza? What are they doing in the West Bank? What are they doing in Lebanon except practicing terrorism?
They're a terrorist state.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Jamal, mention one thing. Let's forget about Hamas for a moment, okay? You're trying to blame everything on Hamas. Look at the West Bank. The West Bank, they don't control it. Look what they're doing. Israel.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. I mean, the military is protecting settlers as they go murder, maim. I've had interviews with people in the West Bank. The guys have just been beaten. They've
murdered and steal.
Yeah. And last week they were even burning them out, burning people out of their homes.
Wow. I want to move to Russia for a bit. I want to move to Russia because I'm very curious on both of your takes on what Donald Trump is doing there. So this is an article that came out by CNN. This is them, I guess, acknowledging reality for once. And CNN, this article is astonishing. So Russia has entered Pokrovsk. It's clear as day that Pokrovsk is about to fall. Chasiv Yar is about to fall. This is a battle that has been taking place over the course of almost like a year, if not longer. They have been able to get in because Ukraine doesn't have the manpower in order to hold the line. Russia has taken as a war of attrition where they're going to be active on the entire front because they have manpower. Ukraine is running out of it. This line, a Ukrainian commander defending the area told CNN that he had not, and by the way, this is not Pokrovsk, but this is another area on the battlefield. A Ukrainian commander defending the area told CNN he had not received new personnel in his unit for 8 months and was only resupplying frontline positions, where sometimes a pair of soldiers hold off a dozen Russian attackers with drones, vehicles would not reach the trenches. There's another part at the very end of this that I think sums up the morale of this group. It says Vasil I'm going with that. Said poor communication from the front lines of the nature of the military problems was a serious issue. Quote, a lot of things are not communicated and are hidden, unquote, he said. Quote, we don't communicate a lot of things to our state. Our state doesn't communicate a lot of things to the people, unquote. He says, quote, to understand the situation, you have to be in it. When we say the situation is difficult, no one understands. You have to be in our shoes. We are tired. Everyone is tired of this war, and I believe other countries are tired of helping us. That's a morale issue. The first one is a personnel issue. I guess my question is, how do you fight a war when you have two people holding one spot? And either of you can answer that? I mean, that's an astonishing admission, because it goes into this idea of this. I think they described what the Russians were doing as lava flow. It's inexorable. Even if it was slow, it was continuous, ever present. And it didn't seem like it was stoppable. And now we're seeing the results of that attrition, where they are effectively losing so much manpower that they can't maintain the positions that they're supposed to be holding.
Well, you put your finger on it. I don't know if you realized you did, but if you're looking at a map, you put your finger on the dilemma right now when you mentioned Pokrov. Because what's happening there right now is two encirclements by the Russians that they will complete and exploit while the ground is still hard. They have about 7 weeks to do that. Mid-September or so, maybe even earlier, the ground will get too muddy and too wet for any kind of encirclement than exploitation that's fast. When they do that, the remaining forces of Ukraine, which is the Russian objective, will be destroyed. There won't be anything left of consequence to fight the Russians with. The manpower problem at the center of that deficiency is critical, as you mentioned. So what's going to happen in the time between now and that eventuality, which is 99% assured, with the government, and most prominently with Volodymyr Zelensky? Is he going to run? Is he going to take his billions, and he has billions, and run? Is he going to be assassinated? That would be my prediction, having worked with Ukraine for several years in the Bush administration, the George W. Bush administration. That's what Ukrainians do. Or will he be simply replaced and disappear? And God knows what disappear would mean in that instance. I think it would mean he would probably be killed without any publicity about it. Yeah. But it's going to happen. And then the question becomes, who's going to be the replacement leader, and what's he going to do in terms of establishing some kind of meaningful overtures with Moscow? Because Moscow is going to be battlefield triumphant and is not going to back off any of its demands at all. And we're going to be sitting there holding our, private parts, if you will, trying to figure out what the hell to do about it. And we've got an idiot. We've got a circus clown who's going to be pondering that. That is a very disturbing situation.
Yeah. Hey, Chief, what I would add to that, Jamal, is that let me just mention this. First of all, you go back and look at any interviews I've done. I've been on record for over a year and a half now saying this was going to be a war of attrition that Ukraine could not win. Right. When you talk about the morale and so forth of the personnel, this goes back months, maybe a year, when they, in fact, being pushed because they're fighting this proxy war on our behalf, being pushed by Lindsey Graham. At one time, their, I think their drafting age at the time, conscription was 25, and they had to lower that, and been pushed by Lindsey Graham to lower that to 18. Hey, you need more military people on the battlefield. We, United States, were pushing that. Go ahead, Lap.
The top part is 59.
No.
They've increased that, by the way. Just to point it out, right?
Okay. Well, you just build my case of the personnel problem then. You're exactly right. My goodness. Yeah. And so, Ukraine is in trouble. I've been on record saying there's no way that Ukraine can win this war. And the bottom line, what we must understand is that we pushed this war.
Yes.
Regardless of what we say about Zelensky and so forth, we pushed this war. Boris Johnson, going all the way back when he went over, on UK, but really on our behalf to say, hey, go ahead and fight this war, no peace deal and all that. And we're going to suffer the consequences, as Larry said, holding our balls, if you will, because, I mean, it's a disaster. Now, at the same time, Russia has lost a lot of people as well, but attrition, you look at the size of their country, they were willing to make that sacrifice. Guess what? Literally for their security. NATO was marching on their door. The response, if Ukraine become a member of NATO and able to have nuclear weapons, you don't think that's a threat to Russia? They warned us that they were going to do this, which I didn't believe at the time. They were going to attack Ukraine, but they did. So we got to start taking people serious, like going back to Iran again. When I guess Israel didn't think Iran would respond and retaliate. They did. We thought because we're so powerful, we could call Russia's bluff. And this so-called threat that Trump has out there now within the days, what are you going to do, Trump? Let's go back to you. We're going to do a nuclear war, Trump.
And Jamal, what Hegseth is working on right now, I have to say that Hegseth is working on it, because otherwise, why are his generals doing what they're doing? Is expanding the war against Russia, because you had this airborne idiot, and I say airborne idiot because I know the airborne in the United States Army, and they have the brains of a pickle. You have this General Donahue going up there and saying, and he's got Ukrainians working for him in terms of this effort, clandestine effort at the moment, but he insinuated it could go out overtly anytime in Kaliningrad, which is absolutely as existential as Ukraine was as a member of NATO to Russia. So we're going to spread the war to the Baltic Sea, because this is a place where Russia has said very categorically it's sacrosanct. We have an agreement with Lithuania, rail and highway, so they can reach from Russia and Belarusia into Kaliningrad. That's their warm water port, if you will, access on the Atlantic. And we're trying to challenge that and shut it down. That's a casus belli too. So we're trying to spread this because Ukraine has gone sour on us.
Yeah, there would have been an invasion of Russia at that point.
And all you have to do is just go and take a look in this so-called big, beautiful bill that we have not talked about as much in public, and what that budget, the DOD budget, has increased to.
$1 trillion.
Yeah.
$1 trillion. Well, there's a larger question for this. And what time is it? Okay, this is probably going to be the last question that's associated with this that I am fascinated by. So when this war started,
which war?
The Ukraine war, yeah. I kept asking, what was it for? And the further on we got into it, I started to ask the question, how far are they willing to go? Meaning there's a precipice that we are coming to that is, it's one thing 2 years ago, but now with articles like that, with that CNN is reporting, by the way, these are the same people who are like, Russians are fighting with shovels and they don't have any morale. Okay, sure, sure. 700 drones a day, sure. But there's a precipice that we're coming to as a country, and frankly, as a world, where the US and Europe are either going to have to say, okay, we lost, we take our ball and go home, and we deal with, let's say, the diplomatic consequences of investing so much of our blood and treasure, or at the very least our treasure, and our humility, into losing a war with the Russians, meaning NATO has been around for like 50 years. And in beefing itself up to fight the Soviet Union, well, Russia's not even the Soviet Union, and to lose on the battlefield in such a way, or do they get further involved? And if they get further involved at some point, I mean, the 10-day thing is nonsense, but at some point, that escalation will get to a point where there is no more escalation. It is kinetic in the way that you have to deal, because there's nothing else that you can do between, meaning there's no space left in regards to escalating in a way that doesn't necessarily become kinetic. Do you think we get to that point? And Colonel Wilkerson, I'll start with you. And Dennis, I want to bring you in on that after.
I think we're already there, Jamal. I think we're in the opening stages of World War III. Call it what you will, a global conflict starting regionally, but we're in the open stages. And it all has to do with the strategic backdrop that China is pushing now 4 base road initiatives. One into the Arctic, that is the freshest one into Ukraine, one into the Central Asian avenue that will be the top, if you will, the northern part of the downward route along the Persian Gulf, and then another one into Iran along the southern periphery. And we're trying to stop that. We know that those Chinese efforts are going to end the American empire, categorically going to end it. We have two choices. We can put someone smart in the White House and deal with that in an accommodating way, compete with it strategically and otherwise, and deal with it in a peaceful, diplomatic way. Or we can contest it to our death, and our death will come when we use nuclear weapons, because we won't go into that night quietly. We'll use nuclear weapons ultimately to stop this change of power in the world. That's what's happening. And we're trying to stop it. And it's absurd that we're trying to stop it. First of all, that we're trying to stop it, period. Second, that we're doing it with a circus clown in the White House.
Chief Fritz?
Well, Jamal, what I will leave you with is that the U.S., the neocon dream, the project for New America, all that is dead now. You know, if you go back, and I hate to keep promoting Deadly Betrayal, at the end there, I talk about the future of our country and the diplomacy that was needed. We must be able to work with China. We must be able to work with Russia and others. And this peace through strength is dead. This peace through strength, the only way we can remain the so-called strength is, as Larry mentioned earlier, is increasing our nuclear weapons, which we're trying to do now, because when we talk about Ukraine, we no longer have the manpower or the personnel to fight a war against China or what Russia is doing right now. And so eventually we must come to the conclusion that as part of what our mission is at Eisenhower Media Network, in order for America to remain strong, it must have to be done through peace and diplomacy, or if not, we're going to find ourselves embarrassed as a so-called superpower, because we're dead in that philosophy.
Which way do you think that goes? I mean, hubris is a heavy, heavy thing to hold. I mean, even the fact we're a superpower, and we must be that superpower, primacy. We get to tell other countries what to do. Hey, Cambodia and Thailand, stop your fighting. Hey, India and Pakistan, hey, stop your fighting. Okay, these countries don't care. Like, they're not listening in this regard. Hey, Russia, we're going to give you 10 days. As Russia told them, we don't care. We're not Iran, we're not North Korea. Is hubris enough to get us all killed?
Look at what happened to the British Empire, and to a lesser extent, the French Empire. Just look at what happened to them. The British Empire is instructive in this regard. The one difference is they didn't have nuclear weapons. Keep that difference in mind.
Yeah.
They tried from roughly the end of World War II up to the Suez Crisis in '56 to restore their empire. They utterly failed. They failed so badly that Churchill was run out of town on a rail, really. And the result was the leaders in Britain who had some brains essentially said, we'll remain the financial center of the West, or at least one of them, and we'll tie ourselves in a special relationship to the new empire, America. And that's what they did. And that's what they've been doing since '56. Well, we don't have anybody to tie ourselves to. The world is being isolated against us. Principally right now, the instrument of that is Gaza and the pariah state called Israel. But it's happening because of Ukraine too. And everyone is waking up. Even Lula in Brazil, I shouldn't say even, he's an early guy to wake up to this, that he understands that the future is moving to the east, and he better make some accommodations with it. And he better break a lot of his accommodations he's made with El Coloso del Norte, the American empire. And he's doing that. And you're going to find more and more people doing that. The situation with us, though, is, as I said, we're not going to go quietly. There's no one for us to latch onto. There's no one to save us. we're going to use the only thing we have left that is of consequence, our nuclear stockpile, to arrest the deterioration of power, instead of electing somebody who has a brain and can work diplomacy and other instruments of national power, like our economics and trade and such, to accommodate this shift.
Jamal, let me just leave you with this.
We won't do it.
Last word.
Let me just leave you with this. You know, we think we're a superpower. We're the only ones. We're the only one that go around talking about, oh, we're the superpower. We're this, so this and that. Other countries allow us to say that, and as Trump will say, laughing at us because of the fact. I want you to think about this for a moment. In a conventional war, we can't defeat China. And as Larry alluded to earlier and said earlier, Russia now is battlefield ready. We can't. Who can we can't even right now, if we wanted to intervene and go into Iran, we can't put forces in Iran like we did in Iraq. It will be committing suicide. So we're only fooling ourselves when we continue to say, and as these other countries laugh at us, we're the only superpower. That is not true. We're the only ones that's running around saying that, and then maybe some other countries, you know, to make us feel good, let those Americans think they're really still the superpower. You know, we just have to come to reality right now. And the only thing that's going to save us, unfortunately, as Larry mentioned earlier, our only saving grace, unfortunately and sadly, we have the nuclear threat.
God, you bring up one last question. Why can't we do that?
Can't
Like,
we do what?
if we had the capability of putting 100,000 troops, 200,000, whatever that number was in Iraq, why can't we do it now?
First, we don't have the troops.
We don't have the troops. We don't have the numbers.
Where did they go?
We don't. Well, a lot of them are getting out at the 2-year point because the FAT program and the intellectual program that the Army's running, for example,
Wait,
don't work
these are the
very
FAT
HF was trying
program?
to do.
well. We have the Army has dropped its standards completely. So you can weigh 400 pounds and get in the Army, and they'll send you to their program to lose that weight. And if you're so stupid you can't even pass the ASVAB test, which is about a third of American 18 to 24-year-olds, they'll teach you the test and then give it to you again. That's how we're maintaining it. The Marines, Jamal, are the only service that, due to their mystique and history and other things that I know about them well,
And small numbers.
they're still meeting their quotas. But there aren't enough Marines to even take Chabahar, Bandar Abbas, let alone the whole country of Iran, which is 6 times bigger than Iraq.
And
90
mountainous.
million people.
And they will come together. Let me just mention this. As part of, I hate to say it again, deadly betrayal, the reason Iran was last, because in fact, you can have, okay, the people are going to turn against Saddam. They will come together, as we saw in the latest conflict between Iran, which they thought, oh, yeah, we can make the country, turn against the Ayatollah. No, they came together, and they will come together, and they have, I think, 90 million people.
Yeah. And the polls now in Iran, Jamal, they are actually angry with their president and foreign minister and others because they seem to be kowtowing to the United States.
Yes.
I'm just pleased the Ayatollah to no end. I mean, he was losing a lot of the support because people were saying to hell with Islam and to hell with all this theocracy in Tehran. They kill our women. They murder our people. They don't allow us to do what we should be able to do. Well, that's all reversed now. It's all reversed, as history shows it will. When another country threatens and bombs you, the people come together.
Yeah, the reformists are not looked upon well. The government, coalesce, especially after being attacked. Guys, this has been fantastic. You two are great. You two are absolutely great. Let's just to give the bio. Dennis Fritz. He is retired Commander Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force, currently or former director of the Eisenhower Media Network, with mission to promote peace and diplomacy all over the world. While on active duty, he served as a principal senior advisor, 4-star commander of Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held the additional duty of senior enlisted advisor to the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. He's the author of Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. Definitely check that book out. Sarah Bills recommended it big time. She was happy as a lark to see him on the show. We also have Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. He was formerly the Distinguished Visiting Professor for Government and Public Policy at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He also taught 6 years at the University Honors Program at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He is also probably best known as retired United States Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff for United States Secretary of State Colin Powell. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joel.
Bye-bye. All right. A great breakdown. We're going to go from one damn good guest. I told you I had a damn good show today. From one great guest to another. KJ No. KJ No is... There we are. KJ No is a journalist, political analyst, writer, and teacher specializing in the geopolitics of the Asia-Pacific region. Contributor to the book, Capitalism on a Ventilator, once censored by Amazon. You can get it on iacenter.org. You can also find KJ on the Breakthrough News Network on the China Report. You will get a taste of him here. Definitely check him out there. He is great guest. How you doing, KJ? You doing okay this morning? This early morning for you. I got to get time zones right. You doing okay this morning? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
Man, I am doing good. It's late here, but no issues. Good day so far. Good show. As long as the show goes well, my day goes fine. I sent you an email on something. I got to start here because I'm just curious. We very rarely talk about internal politics of China. And like any country, I would imagine it's not a monolith. I would imagine there are factions, there are disagreements, political fractures, and all of these other things. But when we're talking about countries, we rarely talk about those things. When we talk about China, it's Xi Jinping, or Russia, it's Putin, as if these are the only people that are in the country. I stumbled across a woman that I really think is a lunatic, but I'm not certain, who was making this argument that a coup was developing in China because Xi Jinping was apparently not long for the world. And when Xi Jinping goes in 2 years, that there's going to be this kind of military revolution of a general that effectively is playing the role of Prigozhin. And the longer she spoke, the more I thought she was insane. But again, I don't live there. I don't know the politics of China. And considering that video had like 30,000 in 4 hours, I thought I'd bring it up to you because that is going to be a 100,000 view video. And I'm curious on your take on this.
There are a lot of insane people spewing insane theories about China. They know absolutely nothing. This woman, when you sent me the link, I knew who it was even before I clicked on it. This woman certifiably insane.
I'm glad you did, because I went through a good 45 minutes of the video and I'm like, okay, I think she's nuts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she constructs her videos in a slick fashion. So clearly, whoever is doing this is working with money and producers and script writers, etc. So whatever's going on here is deliberate, manufactured propaganda. But it's essentially the general message of all her videos is China is on the verge of collapse. And it's on the verge of collapse from internal contradictions. And this is a theme that goes all the way back to the Clintons and before. Essentially, it's simply a variation of China is socialist, and therefore it cannot but collapse. It's just part of that general US propaganda mythology that says that socialism is not viable. Anything that pretends to be socialism is either not socialism, it's really capitalism masquerading as socialism, or it is going to collapse of its own internal contradiction. So she's just, she's just a little, variant on that theme. But you look through her videos, she is certifiably insane from top to bottom. She says that China's population is not 1.4 billion. She says China's population is actually 3 million. Right? They're only 3 million because the streets are empty and people, are, dying in droves, and they all died off during COVID. She is certifiably a whack job. If she said those things you would have to call, psychiatric help. But because she's reading a script that is manufactured by some very, very well-funded propagandists, she gets this huge following, and people actually believe her. Now, one way of looking at her is that she's like a female version of Gordon Chang. Gordon Chang is the quote-unquote China scholar who has been predicting that China is going to fall anytime for the past 25 years, right? Every year he has to update his predictions. Every year, it's the next year. Just tomorrow never comes, but he just keeps on doing that. And people refer to Gordon Chang as really a Chinese agent, because he lulls Americans into believing that they don't have to do anything. China is just going to fall of its own accord. I think that's a little bit too, clever. But there are people who believe this, and really it comes down to an ideological belief. There's some part of their makeup that literally has to believe that, the Western capitalist system is the best system, that it is the only system, as Margaret Thatcher called it. There is no alternative. Right. And in their minds, anything that is not capitalist has to fail. So that's the general framing from which they start from. And then they look for little things that validate whatever paranoid beliefs that they have. I mean, the fact is that there have been some, kind of arrests of high-ranking, officials in China. And this is the promise that Xi Jinping came in with when he started his, government. He said that we're going to go after the flies and the tigers, right? Where everybody is held to the same standard. And it really is very, very impressive, Jamal. I mean, if you are a high-ranking government official in China, you do not get to serve in the government in the area where you went to school or in your hometown. You are always dispatched to a foreign, province, because the assumption is that if you have personal connections from school or from where you were raised and grew up, then there's a kind of temptation for nepotism. So right. High-ranking Chinese officials, they never get to serve in the same area that they either grew up or went to school. They're always dispatched somewhere else. It's a little bit like, it's a weak analogy, but if you can think of like juries where they move a trial to another jurisdiction because they assume that, you can be more neutral and objective. I mean, there are many problems with that, but it's in theory, it's similar to that idea. Another thing that, Chinese officials do is, what was the US Supreme Court doing on Thanksgiving? Well, they were probably meeting with their families and they were going, duck hunting and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. Chinese officials generally, by and large, if you're high ranking or even a middle ranking Chinese official, they expect you on national holidays like the Chinese equivalent of Thanksgiving to go and visit people's houses, especially people who are low income, and deliver them gifts.
What? What? That's so random. Okay, wait a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt people. I was like, oh, you want to interrupt? They, in a political sense, wait a minute, is this a law? Is this just a political sense?
Well, the first piece is policy. The first piece about serving outside of your region, that right. is policy. And the second piece is guidance from the party. The party says that on holidays, you go out and you serve the people. You serve the people, you visit people in their houses. And it's not just, it's not a publicity act, because nobody's there with cameras. It's what you're expected to do. There are no cameras there, but you go and you visit, low income houses and you deliver them, gifts. I mean, can you imagine if Nancy Pelosi had to, go to Hunter's Point and, give people in Hunters Point gifts. No, inconceivable. But it all has to do with the concept is that you serve the people. If you have any modicum of privilege in the bureaucratic system, your job is to serve the people. And this constant approach to cleaning up the system. Corruption is not tolerated. And that has to do not simply with the notion of good governance. Chinese governance is largely meritocratic, but it also has to do with the understanding is that the US is seeking to undermine China. And one of the ways that they undermine China is through corruption and bribery. And so they want the oligarchs and the high-ranking officials to buy properties abroad and to shuffle their money outside, to Western banks, and then eventually they get compromised. And then, it's the Soviet, it's the model that they used against the Soviet Union, essentially create a comprador class that is willing to sell its country out. You want a country of Zelenskys that are willing to sell their country out. And that's how you bring it down. And probably the best example of this was the former mayor of Chongqing, Bo Xilai, who was caught having very, very close ties to MI6. In fact, it's suspected that his wife had, an affair with an MI6 officer, British, Secret Service.
Honeypot.
Yes.
Male honeypot.
Male honeypot, yes, gigolo. Yeah, gigolo honeypot. So anyway, Bo Xilai was taken out of the picture. But in the meantime, you can see how he had all the trappings, sending his children abroad and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a way in which there's a systemic attempt to undermine China through corruption, because this is what capitalism excels in. In capitalism, corruption is the system. That's why in our country, in the United States, we say that free speech is money is free speech, which is another way of saying that corruption is politics. The system is corrupt here, and they're trying to bring in that same level of corruption. And there's a strong resistance to that on the part of Xi Jinping. And because of that, Xi Jinping has been labeled authoritarian. When the US uses the term authoritarian, they simply mean a country which is capable of resisting US hegemonic control and corruption.
Right. Yeah, Brian Beletic often talks about controlling your media space, controlling education, meaning these are ways that the West infects itself in the other countries, where at some point you look up and all of a sudden your media, your education, your these kind of cultural things all point in a particular direction where the government has a much harder time controlling itself. And yeah, that's the rub, right? If you allow Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube into your country, and they don't allow you to be pro-China or pro-Russia, but you can attack China and attack Russia. Okay, well, that's nonsense, right? You can't allow that. And the moment that you get rid of it, it's oh my God, they're being an authoritarian. They're not even allowing Twitter and Facebook in their countries. But that's what they were doing with Russia, right? You could do anything pro-Ukrainian on Russia that you wanted. You can make it up. You can do whatever you want. The moment that you put pro-Russian content, they would get rid of it. If you had RT, Sputnik, any of that stuff, it just wasn't allowed. It's just wow. I agree with you, by the way.
Same thing. If you do anything that criticizes Israel, right? See how long you last if you criticize Israel. But it's the entire infrastructure of the internet, not simply the providers, the social media companies like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. I can't even post comments for the most of the time on my own programs because I get censored, by the algorithm. But not the US controls the backbone of the internet. That what I'm referring to is, the physical structures and the routers of the internet, and they also control the tech companies, the social media companies that have a monopoly on the internet, and therefore they control what people see, hear, read, write, etc. It's an extraordinary power, and these social media companies are all in bed with the U.S. national security state. I mean, they are the one and the same. And so this is what we are up against, and this is why it's so hard to break through, the fog of the propaganda, and it just means that everybody has to work harder, both individually and collectively, to undermine these tech bro, hegemonic propaganda.
I'm curious. Does that anti-corruption flow through Xi Jinping? Because, by the way, it did when Putin got in, and they thought, okay, this is going to be Boris Yeltsin 2.0, and he was not. He was going after oligarchs. He was centralizing power. He was getting rid of many of these monopolistic forces that allowed them to control Russia in a way that they were controlling Russia. It sounds like Xi Jinping did something very similar. Is it a party issue, or is it a Xi Jinping issue? Meaning, is this they're acting this way because Xi Jinping is in charge, and he is the one that is saying, this is what we're going to do because we're pushing back against the hegemony. We need to be, if not pure, at the very least, not overtly corrupt. Or is this a party that recognizes we are under pressure from hegemonic forces in the West that we need to push back against, and so we need to not be corrupt? Which one is it?
I would say it's the latter, because it's the party that elected Xi Jinping. The
Right.
party has the ability to self-correct. You see this all the time. The party is always self-reflexive. It's always self-correcting. It's always reflecting on what its mistakes are and what it can do better. When they have the National Congress, Legislative Congress, it's not like patting themselves on their back. It's really like strong self-criticism that they're doing. They're saying, we did these, we accomplished these things, and we fell short on these things. We need to do better on these things. So it is a political system that has the capacity for self-reflection and learning in accordance with their socialist principles and a dialectical worldview, which our system does not have that capacity. It doesn't have the capacity to self-reflect because it is not open to feedback. Certainly, it does not want any feedback from the bottom. It just tells itself the same old stories. A bunch of high-powered lawyers telling themselves the same narratives back and forth between each other, which is why we're caught in this doom loop of utter and complete detachment from reality and stupidity, which results in extraordinary violence.
So just to be clear, there's no coup attempt that we're aware of. Xi Jinping is not dropping dead in 2 years that we're aware of. He is not invisible in regards to China, where people are maneuvering in order to, I guess, have this kind of military takeover. And one of the other last parts before I get off this woman, she said, when the military takes over, they're going to attack Russia. And I said, oh my God. I was like, okay, you had lost me before, but now you have really lost your mind. I don't believe that for a moment. But she had 40,000 views in like a few hours, which means that video is going to get like 250,000 views, if not more. And I sat there and said to myself, oh my God, just oh my God.
Well, clearly something or somebody is boosting her. So, they want her out there. They want her to spew her nonsense. Now, I mean, as anything, there is a tiny, tiny fragment of truth there, is that there are Western liberal factions in China, just as you have, wealthy corporate bosses in China. They're all muzzled. And, the Western liberal factions, they largely do their debates inside academia. So, there are people who studied in the United States. They come back from the United States and they talk about, we need to do things the way the US does it. Of course, what nobody tells them, or, they don't realize, is they have been coddled in an extraordinary hothouse environment of the United States. That is, they go to Harvard, Kennedy, or they go to Stanford. And then if you stay on Stanford, we call it the bubble, right? I mean, it's kind of this idyllic and idealistic community with extraordinary wealth, just mind-boggling wealth. The student lounge couches are $10,000 each. It's like you're in Brunei or something. Then you have luscious and amazing food, and everybody seems to be talking and dialoguing with each other. And these Chinese scholars think this is what the rest of the United States is like. And of course not. Just step out, a few miles in East Palo Alto and you'll see, what the US is really like. But for them, they're exposed only to this kind of hothouse bubble of US academia. And they generalize that to the rest of the United States. They come back and they say, look, the US is doing great. And, in China, students are in dorms, and, they work really, really hard. And it's not this, sybaritic society of luxury. And so they come back and then they argue for, kind of neoliberal reforms and things like that. And of course, there are other voices, much more progressive voices that argue against them, but they do not control the party. At certain points in China's history, recent history, they've had a stronger effect. And the key thing to understand about China's system is, one is it's meritocratic. That is, they believe in bringing up the best people to the top. You do not get to be the ambassador because, like Jim Hormel, you are the spam king, right? And you donated, $1 billion to an administration. You do not get an ambassadorship simply because you are a tycoon, who can throw money at the party. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. Nobody buys their way into Tsinghua University, just like you can buy your way into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, any of those schools. Simply, you just have to pay enough money. But nobody buys their way into Tsinghua or Beijing U. So the Chinese system is meritocratic. And then the second piece is that it tries to work in a scientific fashion. It's the conceit is scientific socialism. But you do something in a scientific fashion means you try it out and you see if it works. And if it works, you try and replicate it. So you do it in a small region or small city. If it works, you try and replicate it. If it replicates, then you try scaling it. If it scales, then it works. Then you apply it across the nation. And they work always in this scientific fashion because the Chinese leadership are about 80% scientists, as opposed to the US, where 95% are all lawyers. Lawyers make their living telling stories. We call this storytelling the theory of the case. But essentially, their worldview is that if we tell a story and our storytelling skills are better, we win. The Chinese don't function like that. They believe that you ground your approach in a scientific method and you see if something works, you test it. If it works and it shows evidence through testing, then you replicate the test. If the test replicates, then you scale the test, et cetera, and then you derive general principles from it. So that's how the Chinese work. That's their approach to governance. And so far, it is working. It's working so well that very recently, Adam Tooze, historian, said that China is rewriting the very concept of what it means to do development, what it means to do energy, what it means to, develop a society. China is rewriting the rules on that because prior to that, the conceit was always that development was always Westernization and development is always becoming more capitalist. China's saying, you don't have to do that. You don't have to invade other countries, colonize other countries, exploit other countries, or exploit the world. in order to become rich and developed, there is another way. And so I think that is groundbreaking, and it's also the reason why the US feels that it has to destroy China, if for no other reason than it being the threat of a good example.
There's also a racist element to it.
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, it's built into it. It's like the way they look at other countries. Russia is clearly a gas station masquerading as whatever. China, they can't clearly have a better system in the way that they organize their system. Like they just, it's a very odd vigor associated with it. One of my guests, it was an audience member the other day, asked about Gaza. Now, at this point, the world has come to the conclusion that either a genocide has taken place or at the very least is starving people en masse. The world has come to the conclusion, and this is even in Western governments, because you can see these weak leaders trying to cover their ass with statements. So in posterity, when people look back and say, hey, your country was back in this genocide, then they can say, hey, I have a letter here where I said that, I look poorly upon starving kids. I know China is against it. I know Russia is against it. But there is a certain amount of criticism that gets aimed at China and Russia, for that matter, because there is a convention under the United Nations, and I am the first one to say there's no such thing as international law, so it's a bit rich that I'm invoking this. But there is a convention that points out that states can get involved when other states are committing a genocide. Meaning, if I am murdering people en masse, then another state can come in and say, hey, stop doing that. And that the General Assembly or the UN Security Council, I know the United States blocks all of those, can take a much larger role in that. But you don't need those things in order to, let's say, be more boisterous. I was trying to make the point. People make the argument that, well, why is China continuing the trade with Israel? Israel at this point is obviously a client of the United States. The United States has been doing any and everything in their power to undercut China's prosperity and growth. So why would they assist in the destruction of a population? Give me your take on that.
Yeah, I don't have good insights, but what I would argue is that the Chinese, probably to a fault, tried to uphold both the letter and the spirit of international law. And the international law says that unilateral sanctions are illegal. So you have to go through the UN Security Council. The second piece that I would point out specifically regarding trade, and here's the thing to really, really notice about the people who are making these criticisms. The people who are making these criticisms of China, by and large, are Americans.
Yes, that's fair.
And so the Americans who are specifically underwriting, funding, and enabling the genocide, that is to say, the US government, the government of the people who are doing this criticism, they see fit to criticize a third party who is, who is not a party to the genocide. And so
Right.
What's the thinking that goes on behind that kind of mindset, right? That you think that you are the person punching down on these, dying Palestinians, and then you're claiming that somebody else, should do something. Stop me. Why aren't you stopping me? Why aren't you doing something? Let me point out a few other points, okay? Francesca Albanese has come out with a list of corporations that are involved in the genocide. Yeah, you have it right there. If you can put it on the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all the usual suspects. It's the U.S. Monopoly capitalist, Microsoft, Google, the U.S. Military corporations, all the usual suspects, right? Why is there not a boycott of these usual suspects, of these, genocide complicit corporations? The fact is that China does trade. China does trade with everybody, and it trades also with, for example, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Iran, Russia, all the countries that the empire is trying to take down. It does a little bit of trade with Israel, but in terms of the general amount of trade, it is pretty trivial. And China, when it does trade, it also does trade in services with other countries. For example, where does Yemen get its targeting information from?
Yes.
That's Chinese, the Chinese equivalent of, it's the Beidou system that gives Yemen its coordinates. Okay, so I think that if you take, I don't know the internal workings of the Chinese, government, but if you take the general balance of what China is doing against imperialism versus what it's doing for imperialism, it comes out far ahead in terms of what it is doing against imperialism, against Zionism, and for the development and the growth of the global South. I believe that if China did target Israel, then all the knives would come out, and very rapidly you would see much faster, pivot to China. I think we would see war much faster.
Okay, I do get that.
Mm-hmm.
I even agree with that, kind of.
Well, let me ask you one more question, Jamal, then. China not only does trade with Israel, as I said, not a significant amount, but it does do trade with Israel. China also does trade with the United States, right? Mm-hmm. And the United States is the enabler of the genocide. It is a party to the genocide. In fact, it is the underwriter. It is the country that is responsible for the genocide, in that it creates the material conditions, the weaponry, the funding that allows it to happen. So the people who argue this, who are mostly Americans, we have to ask them, should China stop doing all trade with the United States?
Oh, I do get it. No, I totally get your argument. And like I said, I predominantly agree with the argument. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for Americans. They should use their energy to pressure their own government, which is the enabler of the genocide, rather than complain about distant third parties that are U.S. enemies over whom they have no influence. We're supposed to have influence over our own government. So I think the focus and the energy should be on the U.S. government rather than a third party over which you have no influence, unless your agenda is to amplify U.S. propaganda and deflect from U.S. responsibility. I
don't think it removes U.S. responsibility at all. I think the United States is the main proponent that is allowing this genocide to take place. If the United States says stop, it stops. But let's take it to Nazi Germany for a moment. There's a reason why it's built. And again, I'm not attacking China on this. I feel this way about Russia. I feel this way about Turkey. I feel this way about all of those states. Isn't genocide a world issue? Which is the reason why they put it into the United Nations. What do they call it? The documentation of the United Nations. There's a word for it. It'll come to me in a moment. But they put it into that byline because they looked at it as this is something as a world that we should not allow and we should not be okay with. Meaning this is so beyond the pale of what it means to be a human being that any state, meaning Ansarullah, is justified in attacking Israel or attacking shipping in order to stop it. Ansarullah has nothing to do with it. And yet they take it upon themselves to say, we don't like this. This is against us being human beings in and of itself. It's that grotesque that it shouldn't be allowed to take place. Or any state could do it for all intents and purposes. I'm not saying that China should invade.
I agree with you. I think that...
Just be clear, I'm not singling out China. I'm only bringing up China because I'm talking to you.
I agree with you on the principle. I absolutely agree with you on the principle. And I also want to point out that the empire, in particular the US empire, is built on genocide. It's built on genocide from top to bottom, from the start to the to the current moment. And the genocide that we're seeing in Palestine, when you starve people deliberately en masse, that is genocide. That is genocide, right? So what's going on right now is genocide. And it's also the first live stream genocide. We've had a series of genocides. They've been nonstop. But the US itself was built on genocide. When you have these, liberals, they come out and they do a land recognition, we're on, such and such tribe's native land, and they do the land recognition. That is such BS, in my opinion, because that recognition is 500 years too late, right? 500 years overdue. And if you actually do recognize the land and the original inhabitants of the land, then it's not simply enough to do a recognition. You have to express remorse, you have to make reparation, and you have to make redress, and you have to return the land. You should return the land. Don't just go off and make this kind of token incantation, we recognize blah, 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 and then think you're done. Because by doing that, you're actually covering up. You're not acknowledging anything. You are covering up genocide. That's why those people, they never say, we come from you from, Miwok, traditional Miwok lands. They will never use the word genocided Miwok, right? They will only say the name of the tribe. They will never acknowledge that the tribe has been genocided. Start with the understanding that the Native American tribes have been genocided, and then ask yourself, if you recognize that fact, then what else can you do? And that involves remorse, reparation, redress, and return. That's where you need to go. But you won't. But they won't go there. And so it's just this little formula that they do to pat themselves on the back and make themselves feel good. So coming from that standard, we have to understand that the entire empire was built on genocide. Right after World War II, what happened? Well, Korea was split into two. Genocide, genocidal atrocities, right? In Korea, they had these things called the Border League massacres. Up to 1.2 million people. Anybody who was registered as a leftist was killed. They were rounded up and shot and dumped into large ditches. The world's largest mass grave, the longest mass grave on the planet, is in South Korea. It's over 10 football fields long. There are 150 mass graves that are not excavated. They would also shoot them, dump them in the ocean. And the Japanese government complained to the Korean government, there are too many dead bodies washing up on our shores 500 miles away. 500 miles away on Japanese shores, there were countless Korean bodies washing up on Japanese shores because the US was perpetrating a genocide. It was killing off all the leftists. That set the template for what happened in 1964 to 1966, which was the Indonesian genocide, right? 1.5 million leftists shot to death in the streets. The streets were running with blood. The rivers were running crimson. They were clogged with bodies. This is how the empire was constructed. During the Korean War, 4 million Koreans killed, a fifth or a quarter of the population of North Korea. I mean, you think Gaza is bad? Yes, it's horrific. It's unthinkable. And, expand that, by tenfold. That's what you had in Korea. And then right after Korea, then we went into both Indonesia and the Vietnam and Southeast Asian wars. Again, another genocide, right? So the empire is genocidal. It's genocidal from top to bottom. It's genocidal from its intent, its structure, its practices. It's all genocidal. And so then the question becomes, what do you do about this? Is it a global issue? Absolutely. It is a global issue. It's something that humanity needs to rise up and, absolutely do everything it can to prevent. And we also understand that the the purveyors of genocide have total impunity, and then the benefactors, the people who benefit from genocide, are the ones who are, making weak and vague statements and trying to get other countries to prevent their country from committing genocide. I think it's important that people in the United States and in the Western core, that they start to do something about it. All of them can do something, and they're not. And they're simply saying, woe is me, or look at those bad countries, those third countries that we have no influence. They should be doing something, as opposed to, Google, Alphabet, Microsoft, all the US corporations that are direct participants in this genocide.
KJ, I agree with everything that came out of your mouth. I do. I swear to God, I do. And I am not, look, we talk all the time, I think every Wednesday. I am not picking on China in this. If I was talking to somebody about Russia, I would think the same thing. If I was talking to somebody in Timbuktu, I would think the same thing. The United States has gone rogue. It's a rogue actor. It's a country that has lost control.
It's always been rogue, Jamal. It's always been rogue. Yes.
And I agree with that. And by the way, me pointing at this doesn't undercut what's taking place in the Congo, doesn't undercut what took place in Korea, doesn't undercut any of that stuff. All of those things were trouble. My lineage is Native American, right? My grandfather was a Cherokee. And apparently there's Native American even on my grandmother's side. So I get it in a real sense that, yes, this country has always been genocidal in the way that it acted. It went from a genocide to slavery. I get it. I'm not picking on China. There may be some people who are just these liberals who, I'm not a liberal. I'm not picking on China. I feel this way about every country that is allowing a rogue actor to effectively murder people and starve people, especially, you're starving babies. Like however bad it was in South Korea, that doesn't change the fact that there are babies starving or being shot for sport by a genocidal monster of a country that the US is back to the hilt and has put all sorts of money in. I get it. From the point of view, it's like, dude, you're the country that are doing it. How are you bitching about this to other countries? You have my full agreement. You have my full agreement. I just don't know how to corral my own country. And in the case of, let's say, Nazi Germany, where you had Germans, where they were having concentration camps, that they were throwing Jews into the ovens, it took other countries to corral that country. It took third countries. Because
it took Russia waging a total war. The US was enabling the genocide. The Holocaust, IBM produced the punch cards that allowed the Holocaust to happen. The US was selling, goods and steel and, to the Axis powers. It came in very, very late. It was the Russians who tore the guts, or the USSR that tore the guts out of the Nazis. And, so that's another piece of history that's
80% of every Nazi that died on the Eastern Front.
Yes.
I mean, like the wars over there was just astonishing. No, I don't want to give the sense that I'm picking on China. I'm not. I see my country as a rogue actor in the world. We set fires. And pressure on some level needs to be applied on Israel, A, but as you point out, on the principal country that is effectively doing it, B. Part of the reason why I am looking forward to the US passing all of these sanctions or tariffs is because I want it to get the rude awakening that it deserves in this case, or that it's getting beat in Ukraine. And I'm like, good job. It's getting beat in Ukraine. At some point, it's going to come to a reckoning of, hey, we're falling apart. Or when they lose, we lose as a country, the primary currency. All of these things are going to be reckonings. There are canaries in the coal mines all over the place that we are just fundamentally ignoring. By the same token, as you've pointed out on more than one occasion, we need to be able to get to that point without destroying the world in the process. So I get it. I get it. It's a bit rich coming from the US saying, hey, somebody help us or stop us because we can't stop ourselves. I do get it.
Well, but Jamal, let me tell you a story, and it's both. I don't know if it's the right story, but I'll tell it to you.
Go for it.
Anyway.
Go for it. It probably is.
Many, many years ago, there was a young man. He was a student, and he saw a young woman being sexually assaulted in front of his eyes on the street. Okay, and the rapists were armed policemen. Okay? And he realized that he had very few options in the moment. That he could try and make a difference, but he could also get himself killed, and he could also get the young woman killed. So he decided that he was going to create a situation where that could never happen again. The name of that young man was Ho Chi Minh, and the rapists were the French colonial police. And he eventually kicked all the police out of the country. So the thing is that it's not that we don't have to address the immediate, urgent fire that's happening before our eyes. We have to try something. We have to do our best. But we also have to think bigger, systemically, structurally, over the long term. And we also have to organize, and we have to make connections and build allies so that we can take on the enormity of the task. And so I want to invite people that, yes, there is burning urgency because there is a genocide happening in front of our eyes. And also, even as we try our best to address the immediate urgent fire that's going on, we also have to think bigger and think, even despite the urgency, what are the ways that we can get to the root core of the issue? And then also, every single person needs to take whatever small, personal, and direct action that is possible. Let me give you another example. So South Korea almost had a military coup about 7 months ago. And right. You look in the media, you'll see images of people fighting the troops, young women going hand to hand with special forces troops who are, armed to the teeth. Now that's courage. What you don't know is that thousands of parents, the moment they heard about the coup, thousands of parents called their kids in the barracks and said, you have to drop your arms, or at the very least, you have to make sure that you do not harm anybody. And so then the effect of that was that the coup failed. But this is the stuff that happened, beneath, under, behind the scenes. So I guess, my point is, how do we directly influence the genocidal war machine? Okay. Everybody needs to think about how do we make a difference? How do we put pressure directly, not just indirectly? Great. We do the protest. Great. You lobby your senator. Great. They're going to ignore you, but you lobby them anyway. But also, how do you get directly in touch with the corporations or the people working for the corporations that are working in logistics, finance, accounting, transportation? How do you get in touch with them and try and wake up their conscience so that they do a small gesture that makes some kind of difference? We all have 6 degrees of separation. I think that it's important that everybody try and use whatever tiny level of influence they have to try and to stop this genocidal war machine that is wiping out the Palestinians. I think everybody needs to try something along those lines, and at least try and get them to do no harm. Every little bit matters. Every little bit makes a difference. And I think that's what we need to do, rather than making grandiose statements about other people and what they should be doing.
Again, KJ, I want to just nail down, I am not picking on China.
No, I understand. Okay. But yes, but what I'm saying here is that we have to think bigger. Really, we have to think bigger, because it's not just about what's happening. It is about the genocide that's happening right now, but we also have to understand that the empire is genocidal. It always is, always has been, always will be. And so that's the issue. That's the challenge that we have to deal with. And it's not about making, a silly land, recognition, something that happened 500 years ago. It's about doing something now and doing it for the future.
Okay. Fair enough. I understand your point. Again, I want to emphasize I'm not picking on any country. I know it's a bit rich that somebody from the U.S. is making this case, or not making the case, but kind of pointing out the world. When China puts a man on the moon, or when China sent their satellite in space, I didn't look at it as a Chinese development, even though it was. I looked at it as a human development. When Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon, I didn't look at it as an American development, even though it was. I looked at it as this is a human achievement. And when we send something to Mars or something else, regardless of the country that does it, I'm going to say that's a human achievement. Yes, we're individual nations. Agreed. And individual nations can do things that are fantastic, or they can do things that are horrendous. Because all of us are human beings, when I'm looking at something that's a travesty in the world, whether we're doing it or whether somebody else is doing it, I'm looking at it as this is something that is happening on planet Earth that we are effectively doing. And do we have a commitment to one another as human beings to not allow shit like that to happen? Whether it's the US that is the sponsor of it because it's gone rogue, just like Nazi Germany went rogue, or whether it's another country that is doing it. Obviously, I'm not for any of those other travesties that you're talking about, that we've had a litany of them. And you can make the case where they have been far worse in regards to the number of people that have died and that have been killed. And I would imagine if I was around during that time, I would probably have felt the exact same way. I wasn't around during that time. I am around now. And you have a world that effectively has decided that a group of people are disposable, with the United States being the main purveyor of saying these people are disposable. And because the US is a hegemon, as you point out, the cops, no other country wants to get involved. They want to give these platitudes. Oh my God, we're putting this for posterity. I think that's a travesty. I'm not picking on China on this. I'm saying this as a human being living on.
The ruling elite has decided that everybody is disposable except themselves. Whatever is happening in Gaza is coming for the rest of the world.
To us too. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, KJ, I want to make it very plain. I wasn't picking on China. I'm trying to nail that down.
No, I'm not accusing you of that, okay. Jamal. I'm just pardon me. I'm just on my soapbox because I think this is important. But let's look on the bright side, if there is, right? I mean, it's hard to believe that there is a bright side, but the global South is getting stronger and stronger. Yeah. They are building connections. They're building out. The U.S. is trying to create these random conflicts and wars all around the world, most recently between Thailand and Cambodia. Certainly, the U.S. is the it benefits from that. But we can see that the global South is going from strength to strength. And at the same time, what you're also seeing is that the U.S., as it loses its influence over the global South, it turns the screws tighter on its so-called allies. So it essentially what it's doing to Europe or Germany, it's going to make that even tighter. And so it's the quote unquote US allies that are going to feel the full brunt of this transforming world, because they are being forced to become even more subordinate to daddy. In fact, what Ursula von der Leyen, she recently came out with this proclamation about her relationship with the US. Essentially, she's saying the same thing that Mark Rutte is saying. Mark Rutte is saying daddy, or rather he's saying whatever you want, daddy. And
that sounds so dirty. Whatever you want, Daddy.
Is saying the same thing, except she's
Yeah.
saying it in bureaucratic, economic terms, which she's saying, Daddy knows best. Whatever Daddy wants, Daddy gets, and that's what she's saying. And of course, there are contrarians who use an IR framework, international relations framework, and they say, well, this is just Europe trying to prevent abandonment by the United States. They're trying to entrap US into Europe's security and economic architecture.
Yeah.
And, it's hair splitting, or rather delusion, because it's like the prisoner thinking that they have handcuffed the police onto him. No,
Yeah.
that's not what has happened. The police have handcuffed you. You haven't handcuffed the police onto you. But this is the classical neorealist international relations framing. They always claim that subaltern countries are trying to entrap the great powers, their patrons, into their security arrangements to serve their security needs and to avoid abandonment. This is just psychologizing. It's the equivalent of thinking that the subaltern is saying, Massa, don't leave. Massa, please don't leave me, right? It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's nonsense. If you want to follow that logic, it's the psychologizing logic. If you want to follow that kind of psychologizing logic, what you're really saying is that the enmeshment has happened to such an extent that the subaltern, or the child, if you will, has been engulfed into the ideology of the patron or the hegemon. And they've internalized the hegemon's needs as their own. And then they feed it back to the hegemon saying, please don't leave me, Massa, don't leave. And then the patron graciously and reluctantly obliges. It's just one big rigmarole.
Do you have about 15 minutes? Because I want to get into that. And I want to ask you about Cambodia.
Yes, please,
Okay.
go ahead.
But there's a logic to that. They are thinking that way. I mean, they have internalized the notion.
The
From
ruling
Europe-
elite have. The ruling
Yes.
elite, the von der Leyens have. Yes.
Yeah, from the standpoint of Europe and, let's say, Britain, this quote unquote white world, you may even include Australia in this, they recognize that as states, they're paupers. They can't even compete with China. Lord knows they can't compete with Russia on the world stage. They are nothing. And they have latched themselves almost like a leash to America's ass with the thought of, as long as we suck this ass, we will be great. And we will associate ourselves with this, the Goliath on the planet. And so on some level, they've internalized whatever is good for Goliath, even if they don't like it, by the way. Europe has been getting trashed. And yet they still look to themselves and say, in order for us to have any significance on the global stage, for us to have a voice, for us to matter, we need to be associated with the Goliath. In which case, Daddy, what do you need? Daddy, we're with you. Daddy, etc. And Daddy says, you're our vassals, and we will take your tribute, and we will go along with this. But I'm trying to make the point of saying, that is in their minds. That is the way they look at this. Like, you may say, okay, well, you've internalized the slave position. But okay, what if the master leaves? Then they're nothing. Their influence in the globe goes up in smoke. Their voice in the globe goes up in smoke. Their military capability, which is pretty much non-existent, goes up in smoke. Meaning they need that master in order to be anything. Like, do you get my point? Like, or do you disagree with that?
Well, I mean, yes. So we can argue that they're, sub-imperial states, as sometimes people use it. Essentially, yeah, it's the sidekick. The sidekick is nothing without the bully. So they need the bully to be around, so that they can have, kind of a, residual force and power. But my question back to you would be, does the master ever leave? Right? Will the master ever leave? Will they relinquish their power?
I think Europe has doubled down on the declining empire. Like, Europe could have went to China and say, hey, let's make a deal. They could have reached out to the rest of the world. They could have resisted. But this is all they know. Do you remember there's a Saturday Night Live skit of porn stars? And I think it's like 3 or 4 guys. And they decide to leave their job as a porn stars and go working at a cafe or something like that. And the moment that anybody comes up and says, "Hey, can I get a shake?" It's like, "I'll give you some shake." And it's like, "Oh my God." It's like, "This is all I know. That's Europe. This is all we know." Like, they're just porn stars that are out of work, overweight, fat, can't really perform in the way that they used to perform. And they found somebody where they can get a paycheck off. They don't know anything else. These are former imperial empires that have ego, that believe that, they are the greatest thing to walk the earth. And yet their empires have been wrapped up. Their militaries are trash. And they see, as you point out, sub-imperial powers that have latched themselves onto the US with the belief that this somehow gives them this boost of history, this still European elitism that, if they look in the mirror, doesn't exist, but it's in their minds, and they require America to function that way. So I get it. And you can make the case of saying, these guys are slaves that don't quite fully understand that they're slaves. Fair enough. That's true. But it's also true.
They're house servants.
Yeah.
They're house servants. Yes.
Yeah.
Citizens in the imperial core, they benefit from imperialism.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One last thing, Cambodia. Give me your take on that. So this came out today or yesterday? I got to be honest with you. I wasn't sure about the Cambodia thing. I wasn't sure it both had agency. I wasn't sure what was going on with this. Royal Cambodian Armed Forces delegation visits United States Indo-PACOM for bilateral defense dialogue. Now, it seems that in that conflict, that Cambodia was undermanned, or let's say outgunned in real terms. Yes, they had guys with no shoes on who was firing machine guns and weapons, and I think they had war elephants, which I felt bad for the elephant because I think it was going to die. But I get the sense that the Thai military is probably stronger than Cambodian military. I didn't know what was going on with this. There was something about the church. There was something about previous grievances. There was something about Thai's political situation getting fractured. Give me a take. It doesn't have to be long. I'm just curious on how you see it.
It's still a developing situation. I think Brian probably has a pretty good take on it, Brian Berletic, but I think we need to watch the situation more carefully. I mean, we know the material facts. The Thai military is 3 times larger than the Cambodian military. It has a budget 7 times the size of the Cambodian military. They have advanced weapons, and the budget, the GDP of Thailand is 10 times that of Cambodia. So it is very, very hard to conceive that Cambodia would initiate an attack on a much larger, more powerful adversary unless it felt like it had something or somebody else in its corner. Now, everybody's talking about the causes, but there are 3 ways of thinking about a cause. It's like, why was the window broken? We can say the window was broken because it was made of glass and glass shatters. We can say the window was broken because somebody threw a rock into that. And then we can say the window was broken because a thief was trying to get in to my house, etc. Right? So we can think of causes in 3 ways. The material cause, which is the underlying conditions, the efficient cause, which is the triggering cause, what we usually think of as the cause, and then the teleological cause, which is the object or the goal of what we're trying to do. So in this situation, everybody pretty much agrees on the material causes. Essentially, it's a lingering border dispute caused by colonial carve-up by the French in 1907. And this has happened everywhere. Asia, Myanmar, India, Pakistan, India, China, all of this. These are imperial carves up. And then we also have the maritime disputes caused by, the maritime UN close regime. So everybody generally agrees on the material cause, and they also agree on the efficient cause. That is, there were recent skirmishes where soldiers died, and these happened around a contested temple. So there's agreement on the material cause and the efficient cause. It's the thing that people don't really have clarity on is the teleological cause, or the reason or the objective of this. what is the goal? What's the objective of these skirmishes? Does it have to do with, the Taksin family or, Hun Sen's family trying to consolidate power, show themselves as, the legitimate, rulers of their country? Does it have to do with U.S. attempts to lure China into a border war or create just more disruption in Southeast Asia? Does it have to do with kind of internal factions inside Thailand between the military and the civilian government that are at loggerheads, that are trying to use war to boost their, power and prestige? Are they trying to undermine the military? Is this just a general U.S. intervention to accelerate coup processes or disintegration in Thailand and in Southeast Asia? It's hard to say, Brian, from Jamal, from where I stand. I think that Brian makes a lot of really good points, and I intend to, kind of monitor his analysis. And there's some very important points we need to put out, that people don't understand how closely Cambodia is tied to the U.S. Military machine, and also the way in which Cambodia has been a haven for Thai color revolutionaries. These are very, very important facts. and we also have to point out that Thaksin Shinawatra is a Marcos-type Western quisling that the U.S. very, very much wants back in full power. There's a conflict between the military and civilian government in Taiwan. The Thailand's military and the monarchy, they want good relations with China, and the civilian government wants to go, to be U.S. quislings. And of course, ultimately boils down to the fact that the U.S. wants to divide and disrupt Asia, in particular Southeast Asia. So whatever's going on is just the beginning, I believe. Just as we see in Myanmar, that's an unending conflict. I think there's potential for a lot more conflict in Southeast Asia. So the big picture is whatever's happening, I believe that the empire of chaos probably has some hand in what is going on. And I expect that as we accelerate to World War III, we will see more and more of these kind of small conflicts that will just make the conflagration worse and worse. It's not an optimistic assessment, but I think that we need to watch things carefully. The other thing I'll say is that there's this thing called signal detection theory. I don't know if you know. Essentially, anytime you get a signal, you're also going to get noise mixed in at the same time. And noise get mixed in together, and they usually both signal and noise form, a statistical normal curve. And sometimes signal and noise are more distinct. Sometimes they're more intertwined. But depending on where you set your criteria, if you decide that you want to pick up all of the signals, then you're also going to mix in some noise, and you're going to get, false hits. And on the other hand, if you decide that you're only going to get pure signal and you're going to exclude all noise, then you are going to get, miss a lot of signals as well. And so we have to decide where on this, kind of curve, or this, bimodal curve, we want to set our detection. And depending on that, we're going to draw different conclusions. And I think, for example, Brian is highly tuned into capturing all the signals. Carl, for example, just as an example, is more interested in pure signal, and I see myself as just kind of monitoring the entire spectrum. So all of this is a fancy way of saying
it's unclear
going on. It's not quite clear yet.
Right. Right. KJ, thank you for this. Yeah, because Carl's thing was these people have agency. This is about a long-running feud, and Berletic is more in terms of this is wider war. These are fault lines that the U.S. or the empire is getting involved in. And I'm like, okay, I don't know which. We'll see. I guess I'm on your side on this one.
Important question to ask here. We're really trying to figure out what is the purpose, the objective, the teleological course. And to answer that question, we really have to ask, who benefits? Cui bono. Just
Cui
keep
bono.
asking that question
Yeah.
and follow the money.
KJ, always enjoy talking to you. I really do. I always learn something in these conversations. I always get something out of it. And I think the audience does also. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. KJ No, journalist, political analyst, writer, teacher specializing in the geopolitics of the Asia Pacific region, contributor to the book Capitalism on a Ventilator. That book is available at iacenter.org. You can find KJ on Breakthrough News Network, China Report. KJ, when is your next report coming out?
One came out last week. It'll be next week. And I just did Dr. Wilmer Leon's show yesterday.
Did you? Wilmer is fantastic. Wilmer is awesome. That's awesome. That is very cool. Yeah,
So
Wilmer
the
is
show is connecting the dots. You can check it out.
okay, and that one is already out.
It's already out. Came out yesterday. Wilmer Leon's Connecting the Dots.
Yeah, Wilmer is good. That should be a really good interview. Funny, he's knowledgeable, doctor. I mean, he's fantastic. Thank you for this, KJ. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
You be safe. Have a good one. All right, we have come to the end. We've come to the end. Diane Thomas, oh, you guys have been great. I love when you can bring, I think this is supposed to be good people, let people talk about what's going on. Thank you for your guests. Well, thank you, Mama Thomas, for it. I think Mama Thomas is trying to make the point of supporting the content, and I thank Mama Thomas for it. And look, to back up a point, you guys help make the show what it is. The show, it's a labor of love, I suppose, in some cases. Many of these shows are demonetized, and oftentimes your donations and contributions help the show remain what it is. And no, I always get uncomfortable with this part. I hate doing this part, but it's just kind of part of being a YouTuber, I suppose. You can always support the content: PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, buy me a coffee. All of those things help support the content. Jinho Choi, member for 4 months. Thank you, Jinho. Jamal, let me know your thoughts about American Eagle Outfitters ad campaign featuring Sydney Sweeney and the Aryan Blue Jeans. Oh, don't ask me that. That woman is sexy as all hell. That woman is Venus. Venus incarnate. There is something about the way Sweeney looks, even before that advertising campaign. It just does it for me. It just does it for me. There is a very, very simple formula in getting a guy to buy stuff. It's very simple. But a very attractive woman and a very sexy pair of jeans. Put her on drinking beer, drinking alcohol, and a guy will buy that product. I got to be honest, I didn't see the Nazi connection. I don't get it. Maybe I just haven't looked into it. I saw people complaining about it. I get the sense that some people are complaining about it because they don't look like Sydney Sweeney in a pair of jeans. I could be wrong. But we are in a weird liberal space where, do you know the guy who played Aquaman? I can't think of his name. Jason Momoa, I think. Yeah, Jason Momoa. I think Jason Momoa, and again, not gay, I'm just kind of pointing it out, is probably the sexiest man on the planet. And I would totally understand why every woman would want Jason Momoa. I get it, right? If you put him in a pair of, I don't know, whatever, in order to sell the women, I'm not going to bitch that they're doing that. But that's what it seems like is happening with Sydney Sweeney. Now, someone else may be able to correct me on this, and I may be missing something. Thanks, Jamal. Great show. Cheers from Canada. Thank you, Keith Alcock. Thank you, Keith. So I got to be honest, I don't quite get it, Jinho. I mean, what I saw was a very attractive woman wearing the hell out of a pair of jeans. Will it get me to buy those jeans? No, because I don't care. I just think she's an attractive woman. If I need a pair of jeans, would I get a pair of jeans? Yes, I'll get a pair of jeans. It may not be those. I don't get the controversy. And it feels like people are just making controversy to make controversy. I don't get the Nazi thing. I don't get any of that stuff. I didn't see the Nazi thing in this. What is this? Sydney Sweeney and her Aryan blue. It's blue jeans. It's blue jeans. It's just blue jeans. What the fuck? I don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. They, in the old days, and maybe because I'm ancient, they used to sell jeans in the exact same way. That's the way they used to sell jeans. That was the way they used to sell alcohol. That's the way they used to sell products to men. But a very attractive woman, let her eat a hamburger. It was gross, but they would do it. Get a very attractive woman in a bikini, standing next to a beer. I don't see the connection, but they would do it. Put a very attractive woman in a pair of jeans. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I am missing something. I just saw it on the commercial. Jay, just say you hate white people and be done. I'm done with it. Those smiles, those eyes is very clear. She's sexy as shit. I don't know. That woman could be in a potato sack. And you know, just like I said, that woman is Eve. Fucking Venus. Sydney Sweeney's face is accurate to my head. She's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. And yeah, all publicity is good publicity. Just because a bunch of liberals are like, oh my God, she's wearing Aryan blue. Oh. I think it is most likely somebody who can't wear a pair of jeans like that is jealous about Sydney Sweeney be able to wear a pair of jeans like that. That's what I think. This liberal stuff is nonsense. Can't stand it. Make me want to Mongol. What is that raider with Daenerys? Daenerys. They hold cards, but they clearly have coup, their government. I was attracted to her. She's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. Give her credit. Pam Bondi went MIA. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Pam Bondi. I mean, they're struggling with the Epstein stuff. I don't think they're going to get rid of that. I haven't watched Hollywood movies. It wasn't a movie. It was an ad, from my understanding. It was an ad. Brian's brain program to white women, but it's not true. What? Priest of Hiroshima. All right. Vanessa Kirby, more like my type. Vanessa Kirby, why is that name familiar? Who's Vanessa Kirby? Vanessa Kirby is, the woman who played Fantastic Four. The woman who played Fantastic Four. She's attractive. Rail thin, elegant, but attractive. Yeah. How many movies was Paul Robeson in? Oh, that I don't know. What Shakespeare to play? I hate contempt for America gives liberals. FKC. I hate the contempt Americans give liberals. I mean, it's a weird place we've gotten to. Like in New York City, they're putting that model up who's like 400 pounds. Black woman in the city. And it's like, why are you putting that statue up? It's like, why are you putting that statue up? Look, there's nothing wrong with excellence. Whether that's theater, music, whatever form that excellence is in. In some cases, it's a body that is just physically perfect in the way that we see perfection in the human context. And you can say, well, that's because people have been organized to do that. Maybe, maybe not. I don't, maybe. But you have your takes. I've dated women who were overweight, thin. Hell, I just went on a date with a woman that is Malaysian. Like, my takes are wide. But I do recognize it's somewhat of a quote unquote societal standard of what's attractive. And obviously, if you put that standard in a pair of jeans that she is wearing fantastically well, men may go out and buy those jeans. The liberals who are screaming about that stuff, it's like, dude, shut up. I don't care. I don't care. She's hiding jeans. Leave it. All right. I am going to end this. I'm going to end this. What is this? Yeah. The billionaire class has put America, has been dividing into class. Lena Heath. I actually liked her in, oh God, was it Gladiator? No, it's not Gladiator. 300. I took my mom to see that movie in New York. Yeah, she was very attractive. All right, news and jerks. News and jerks. All right. What woman would you date? Jamal, sweetie pie. What woman would date you? Aw. It wasn't really a date, it was just a coffee date. But it was the first time. Look, when you are doing the digital nomad thing, you're jumping from country to country, it is very isolating. Don't speak the language in many cases. Most of the time I spend is work. So, and doing the show in the evening is weirder. Because when you did the show in the morning, you wake up at like 4 or 5, and you're thinking about what do you want to talk about? And you're looking over the news to figure it out. When it's hanging over your head all day, you're thinking about it all day. It's like the moment that you wake up at like 10 a.m. or something like that, you're thinking, what am I going to talk about today? What is the news saying? What is this? What is that? And you have covered so many articles and so much news that it blurs. And it blurs in a way where you're like, okay, I don't know what to talk about. It gets weird. It's very weird. When we used to do the radio show, we used to have a meeting where you have the station manager and you would have your team. And oftentimes, because your show is first thing in the morning, when it's like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Yes, you have a lot of stories in your head, but oftentimes the station manager is like, okay, what do you guys want to talk about? And he was like, I have a few stories here that I may want to bring up. And all of us would just kind of say, okay, yeah or nay on the stories. When you're doing it by yourself, it's different. It was always difficult for me to figure out what is the thing that matters when you're looking at 100 stories. I hope that makes sense. And so you then said, okay, so what is your channel about? Is your channel about foreign policy? Is it specific to more of a Russia thing? Okay, well, yeah, because I worked at a Russian station, we covered this stuff kind of intensely, so this is kind of what I know. And then you say, okay, well, China also was part of that. Okay, we'll bring that China in, let's bring Iran in. But then you kind of want to talk about stuff that piques your interest too. Like those things pique that interest, especially in the context of war and foreign policy. But you're covering it every day. And so it's a thread that you're kind of covering until something big happens, in which case you get a certain amount of excitement and everything out of it. But they blur. It's like, okay, I have 100 stories. Which one do I cover? It's just weird. It's very weird. When you had a team doing it, the team can kind of just say, hey, a team dynamic is different because the team dynamic helps narrow it down. And you are part of that team that's helping narrow it down. It's different when you're by yourself. It's just weird. I found one more. Q Synergy. Jamal, where's Sarah Bills? That girl needs. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Sarah is fantastic. She's awesome. Sarah is awesome. By the way, she will be here tomorrow. She does great work. She does great work. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, Synergy. Be a better person. Be a better person, Q Synergy. One of my guests, I had the guy on, the guy from Pakistan. I enjoyed the conversation immensely. I thought about the conversation for like days after he left. Somebody in the chat put something to the effect of, what was it? It said something to the effect of, oh God, what was it? It was like, oh, now we're bringing in the caveman or something like that. And it's like, oh, fuck, man, I can't say that, even though that shit is funny. I've never heard this guy say black women are attractive. Dude, all of my girlfriends were black, with the exception of one. Every last one. So, yeah, just because you never heard it doesn't mean it's not true. Let's say mainstream AM radio sucks now. How could they reject me if all of my girlfriends were black? Well, again, with the exception of one. My wife was black. I was with her for 10 years. So try harder. I'm out. Caleb Maupin is live. Oh, tell Caleb Maupin I said hi. He is. I need to check him out, see if he can join one day. All right, guys, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. You can support the content, PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, all of those things, memberships, buy me a coffee. All of that stuff is out. And I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Damn good show tomorrow morning also. Shit, I got to get to 7 o'clock. Got to get to 7. But Jura Horn is going to be here tomorrow morning. Ivy Loeb is going to be here. Sarah Bills is going to be here. I don't know what that 7 o'clock is going to be, but it will be great. Fingers crossed. You guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a good one, guys.